everyone. Everyone is so early. All right, we're going to do a sound check. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we're excited.
Yes, thank you.
Check mark. We win. Okay. So I did log in a little bit early, so we're going to give it like maybe 1 or 2 more minutes for folks who want to join to catch up with us. I know we're supposed to have quite a few individuals join us, so we're just going to hang out. Before we start, while we're waiting for people to join, if you guys have any questions, just right out of the get-go, go ahead and ask. I'll try to answer them as much as possible.
I want to ask about how long will last our course.
So the actual today's session is 3 hours, and there's actually 10 lessons. So no, excuse me, not 10 lessons. I'm lying. I have to do math. So it's 42 hours. I actually didn't do. So it works out to be how many lessons? 14, right? Is that correct? 14?
Maybe.
14. Yeah. 14, yeah. Sorry, I keep saying 10 because I'm used to this being a 4-hour session rather than 3. So my brain is like still stuck in that dimension. Yeah, 14 lessons. Yes, I just confirmed. So we are going to take a couple holidays in this course. I'm actually bringing up the calendar right now so I can tell you exactly which days. So obviously not this Thursday, but next Thursday, Thanksgiving, is going to be off. I think that doesn't surprise anybody. And then after that, we are going to have a lesson on the 22nd. Excuse me, not 22nd. No, correct, right? Sorry, my computer is lagging. That's why I keep. So yes, the 20th and the 22nd of December. So we are going to have a lesson on the 22nd. And then after that, the week between Christmas and New Year's, we are going to have off. So there's going to be no lessons on the 27th or the 29th. And then we're going to come back and just continue through until the end of the course. So we're going to have a lesson on the 3rd, and then so on until we have a total of 42 hours complete. So 14 sessions. Does that answer the question, sort of?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, perfect. I like your background. Any other questions?
Will you be the sole instructor here, or will any other people joining?
As far as I understand right now, I am the only instructor. If we finish everything that we have planned for this course, all of the curriculum, and we want to have some kind of guest speaker, usually like if we finish early and we have like 3 hours left in the course, I will ask what kind of topics you guys want to, talk about an additional. And if something that I can't cover, we can always have a guest speaker, but that's usually the very last session. And it's very rarely that we like run out of material to talk about, but if we need to, we have that.
I mean, in terms of syllabus, will you be following the web application automation, or will you be also pointing the desktop application automation as well?
We're not covering desktop. So it's going to be essentially WebDriver, Python, and then we are going to talk about some other things like, Git actions. We're going to talk about Git and just kind of working with the code in general. But, obviously things like debugging or how you structure your framework. So page object model, or whether, how Cucumber fits in, how you can put a 3rd layer on top of it and have BDD. But we're not going to branch out into mobile, and we're not going to branch out into desktop. It's specifically just kind of the container is web and Python.
I understand. Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry, y'all. I feel like I'm kind of crooked, so I keep wanting to look to the left. Hold on. There.
No, you're fine.
I think I'm straight now. Perfect. All right, awesome. So, give me 1 more second. I'm trying to close windows I don't need so that they don't interrupt us. All right, so hopefully by this point, why are you messing with me? Sorry, I'm closing windows and it's refusing to close. That's what's happening right now. All right. I'm going to start off by sharing my screen. So you guys will see all of yourselves for a split second. I'm gonna get this all configured so it doesn't in our way. 1 second. Pin me. There we go. So we're gonna do this. And the first thing we want to do, right, is we want to pop open a new window. Just this. And if you guys haven't yet already, right, what you want to do is you want to download Python, right? And I actually did provide a link in Slack. So if you haven't got a chance yet, perfect time to do it. So go ahead and download Python. Now, you don't actually have to have the latest version, as long as it's some version of, Python 3, 3.8 is fine. Any version that you have. If you already have it installed, you do not need to download a new version. And the cool thing about this website, if you go to python.org/downloads, is that it actually already is able to tell which operating system you're accessing this website from. So that means you don't have to worry about picking whether you're, have to get the Windows version or you have to get the Mac version or the Linux version. It's actually going to figure it out for you. So just basically click the button and you're good. Questions? Awesome. All right, let's keep going. So additionally, I also did provide a link to PyCharm. Now, PyCharm does come in 2 flavors. What is PyCharm? PyCharm is an IDE, which is Integrated Development Environment, which is a very fancy way to say that it's an editor. It's a very fancy editor that lets us edit code and it lets us execute code. The biggest benefit of using an IDE is that it provides a whole bunch of code completion, and it also provides kind of pre-formatting and testing of the code before you even execute it. So for example, it's able to detect when you mistyped something or miswrote something before you even try to run your code, which means you don't have to constantly keep trying to run it just to see if you forgot a little colon somewhere, or indented something weird, or forgot some kind of parentheses somewhere. So it's very nice. There are 2 flavors. There's professional and community. Right now, it's perfectly fine for everybody to install community. Honestly, for most things we're going to be doing in this class, community edition is more than enough. I use it at my regular work all the time. It's perfectly fine. The only thing that we may need a professional edition for is when we start playing around with Cucumber. And it's not because Cucumber doesn't work in the community edition. It's simply because a professional version provides autocomplete. So in other words, when you start typing something out in Cucumber, it will autocomplete for you. It will give you suggestions, so you don't have to remember precisely how to do it. But once we get to that point, I'll either have temporary licenses for you, or we can install this and then you get 30 days. So one of the 2 things, right? It should be okay. I actually did reach out to PyCharm in the past. They have been, or JetBrains more specifically, in the past, they've been very nice to us, and they've always given us 4 months long licenses. So I'm waiting to hear back from them, and I also need to know the final count for the class. So as soon as I know the final count for the class, I can ask them for those licenses. Hopefully they'll be just as nice as always, and they'll give us those licenses for 4 months to use for a professional version. But for now, community, you're golden. So again, here, if you're on a newer Mac, you might want to get the Apple Silicon version and download it. If you're on, a regular Mac, or if you're on a Windows, then again, just, go forward and download whatever that button, just the standard button, click on it. All right. So having said that, I actually already have all these things installed on my computer, but I'm going to go through the motions anyway. You'll see me abort right before I click the final, finish button. And that's just because I already have this stuff. But you just continue going through. So the first thing we want to make sure we have is we want to make sure we have our Python. Once you download it, make sure you double click it. And then most of this, you can actually just say next, next, next. So, obviously the important information, the README install options, you can go ahead and continue. Here also history license, you can continue. The only thing you need to do is read the license and agree to it. And then, of course, it's going to propose to be installed in the default location. If you're on a managed computer, in other words, if you're on a work computer and they've locked your admin privilege, so they're not letting you install into your /library or program files if you're on a Windows. What you can do is you can change the install location and install into your user folder. So what I mean, unfortunately, I don't have a Windows, but I do have a Mac. So I'll show you what I mean on the Mac. So there is applications folder here, right? And so when I double click on it, you can see that it's immediately under my root folder, right? So it's right under the root. There's really not much above that applications folder except my hard drive. But there's actually another applications folder that you can place inside your user folder. See, that's also here. And that's a completely different applications folder. So when you're installing something, you can put the actual, the program either into your system folder, which is that other application that I showed you that's directly on the hard drive, or you can put it into this one, which is under your user. And for this, you do not need admin privileges. So that's what I mean by custom. So for PyCharm, if it's not letting you install PyCharm when you're trying to run it because it says you need admin password and you don't know your admin password because your company locked it, right? Just make sure you install into this applications folder instead of this one. All right. And then for Python, right? Same thing. By default, it's going to try to install it into for Windows program files, for Mac, again, into, I forget actually where it installs it. I think library. That's right on the hard drive. But again, you can change the location of it. You can install it into somewhere in your user folder or somewhere in your own personal Windows folder. It doesn't matter where. And then we will just configure path to point to it. We just actually will go, we'll configure it so that your PyCharm knows where to find that Python, even if it's not in a standard system folder. So just make sure when you install it, remember where you put it. You need to remember specifically which folder you dropped it into. That's the only hard part. Write it down or copy, paste it somewhere, but you want to remember that folder. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions? So again, if you do want to change the install location, make sure you click on that custom button, and then you can select where you want to put it. And then if you want to change something completely different, let's see, for example, I want to do this. It's not letting me for some reason. Probably because I already have it installed, you guys. So I'm going to try not to mess my stuff up. And then you can also go here. Sorry, you can also go. Why is this thing going to be weird? Yeah. I want to go back to that button. Standard install. So over here, so there's two buttons. You can click here to change the install location, or you can also click here, customize, and you can also select which things you do not need. It does install some things that you probably do not need. So for example, GUI applications, you actually do not need. You can have it, but you're really never going to use it. You can install Python documentation. It's nice to have it, but it's also available online, so you technically don't need it. So if you want to save yourself a little bit of space, you can uncheck some of these things. The pip, install or upgrade pip, that you do need. So it's a special tool that Python comes with Python that helps you install all of the additional modules that Python doesn't come in, in the box with, and we are going to be installing a lot of those. So pip is something you definitely do need. Unix command line tools, again, it's up to you. It's a very small file. I usually just install it, but usually GUI applications and documentation, you can also uncheck if you don't need it. It's up to you. All right. So let's do install. I'm going to pretend that I entered my password. I'm not. And then just say install software, and it will install for me. Again, if you are not doing the admin, the system folder, make sure that you just, install it into the regular user folder. Okay. So we have that installed. We're pretending it's that installed. We remembered where we installed it. Same thing with PyCharm. You're just going to double click on it. It's going to immediately pop up and tell you to drop it into the applications folder. Again, this applications folder is your system folder. If your computer doesn't allow you to install it into this applications folder, then just close this window, or rather you can leave it open. You can open your system settings. Come on, open sesame. And then you can just drop it into the other applications folder. So instead of doing it from here to here, you can pick this thing up and you can drop it here, right? So just like that. Again, on the Windows, same thing. You're going to have a little bit of a different UI. It's going to be a wizard. It's going to pop up and ask you where you want to install it. Just change the location to some other folder, and then just remember where it is. Okay, any questions there? If you're on a work computer? User bin Python is the correct path. Yes, perfect path. And then as long as your system knows where it is and you know where it is, we can find it from PyCharm. So at this point, everything has been installed. We can go ahead and pop open our PyCharm and kind of get to know it. And we can also start writing a little bit of code, right? So here I have PyCharm. Now, usually when you open this for the very first time, you're not going to have anything here. Obviously, I already did have some stuff, so ignore that. When you come here, usually it will just be completely empty. Like there's going to be nothing here. And the only thing that you will have the option to do is you will have essentially a new project button, open button, and get from VCS button. All right. Now, get from VCS essentially means version control. And I'm sure everybody here at one point or another heard of, like, for example, GitHub or Bitbucket, or some companies use CVS, or they use SVN, or there's like a whole bunch of different ways to store code. But any kind of version control systems, right? When the code doesn't live on your actual laptop, but lives somewhere remotely, and then all of the team members on your team are able to share that code. It's kind of like cloud, right? You would use this button from. So that means somebody else already created that code, and now you're trying to get a copy for yourself, right? Does that make sense? Now, this one, again, if somebody went and gave you maybe a zip file, or maybe somebody gave you already a folder that you want to load, right, which already has somebody else's code, again, you can open it. Or maybe you created a code in a different IDE, or you just from scratch in Notepad. You can open it using this open button. What we're interested in doing right now is we're interested in starting a new project. So we're going to click on new project, and we're just going to fill in something. By default, it always puts it inside the coding course Python project. That's just the default. You can absolutely leave it the way it is. It's not going to hurt you. It's a perfectly valid name. Or you can specify a different location. So for example, I'm going to call that folder Portnov, and it's 2022. And then I'm going to call it test automation. All right. So basically it's going to create a folder for me, Portnov 2022. It's going to do it automatically. And then the actual name of my project is going to be test automation. Any questions?
No.
All right. Well, if you guys do have questions, speak up. Don't be shy. I'm here for it. I love questions. All right. So this is where things get a little bit weird, right? Because naming things, easy. We all know how to do it. Virtual environment. What is it and why do you want to use it? It's actually highly recommended to use virtual environment for multiple reasons, not the least of which cleanup. Okay. If at some point you decide you no longer want to have this code on your computer, all right, it makes it so much easier to delete it. So essentially, what is a virtual environment? Virtual environment is a mini Python environment. It's a mini Python location where all of the packages you're going to be installing, they're going to be stored into this location. So it's not in the system where you actually installed the bare minimum out of the box Python. This is the everything else location, right? So you will still have your clean version of Python somewhere wherever you just installed it. But all the other things that we're going to be installing in this class, the Seleniums, the test data generator called Faker, the Chrome driver manager, the I can't remember any of the other things. API thing. Give me 1 second, you guys. I don't know what's happening here. One moment. Sorry, y'all. My 3-year-old decided to interrupt. All right. So essentially anything that you can think of that we're going to be installing for the project needs to go into that virtual environment, right? And then whenever you want to clean up, you can just delete the whole folder and it's gone. Additionally, if you install something weird or one of the files become corrupt, or there's some kind of, incompatibility between two modules, and you're not sure which one is at fault, and you're not even sure what you're supposed to delete, again, you just take that folder, you throw it out. Great, awesome. Now, so that's the kind of the most obvious one. The other one is that it's actually possible to have multiple versions of Python living on one system. And it's also obviously more than common to have multiple projects. So it's very common for a company to have multiple repositories, multiple products that they're supporting, right? And each one of those products will have its own repository. In other words, its own project, right? And all those projects might have completely different packages that they need in order to run, completely different ones. And as I said before, it is possible to have a conflict between packages. So you might have one project with packages that will completely compete and interfere with other packages. So by having virtual environments separate for each one of those projects, we avoid that conflict. So again, virtual environments are good. Yes, you can install modules into the system folder for Python. It's not recommended. So that's what this is asking us. It's asking us, can I create a virtual environment for you? And it's going to do it, automatically for us. We don't have to do anything fancy. Not only that, but once we create it, every time we're using PyCharm, it will automatically turn it on for us. Okay, so it'll automatically, as soon as we log into PyCharm, it will assume that we want it on and it will have it enabled for us. So it's going to create it inside here, my test automation folder, or my project that I just named, and it's going to call it venv, so virtual environment, right? Venv. It's also here asking me which Python to use. Again, it's possible to have multiple versions of Python. So if you do have multiple versions installed, you can choose here which version you want to use for this project. If you just installed Python right now, you will probably have version 3.11, right? That's what we saw downloaded. But if you have an earlier version, as long as it's 3.8 or later, you're perfectly fine. In fact, you probably will even be okay with 3.7. I do not recommend 3.6 or earlier. It just has too many updates since, so it might have problems when we write code. So I'm going to choose my default 3.10. And then after that, you're basically good to go. You can you can just say create, and then the magic will be done for you. All right, so I'm going to give everybody a minute to catch up. Once this has, kind of completed, we can proceed. So go ahead and create your project. Make sure you give it a name. Make sure you select virtual environment, and then just press complete to create it. All right. So hopefully everybody was able to catch up. If not, drop me a note. All right. So now, as you can see, when we created a project in PyCharm, actually on that previous screen, it did ask us if we wanted to create main. What is main? Any code. It actually doesn't matter if you're using Python, if you're using Java, if you're using C#, C++, doesn't matter. When you create an application, right, you will have tons of files. And when you try to run that application, the actual, whether it's a compiler, interpreter, whatnot, runtime environment, it needs to know which file is the starting point. It needs to know all this other code. How does it fit together? Where is the start? And so it's kind of a tradition to call that file main. In most languages, you will call it main. In HTML, it's actually called index, but nevertheless, the idea is the same, that you have a starting point. And that starting point, if you decide that you want to run your application, that's the first file that is going to get executed. So it's nice that it already created it for us. It's already kind of put a little bit of fluff template code inside there. We don't actually need it, but it's something for us to talk about, right, when it gets created. So make sure that you have a main file. If you did not create a main file, not a problem. All you need to do is you need to go to File and say New. right? And then you will select Python file, right? So you're going to select Python file, and then you can just give it a name. You can call it again main, or you know, whatever you want to call it, test, or I don't know. Don't call it class because that's actually a reserved word. But maybe I don't know, today. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you call it. And then just press enter. It's going to create a new file for you. Again, the other things that you see inside there, sorry, I'm actually moving my Zoom panel. The other things you see inside here are really not important. It's just a template that's been put in there. You don't have to type it out. It doesn't have to match. As long as you have a file that has a py extension that we can start writing code into, you're golden. Now, oftentimes when you do create a file, you will see this piece on the bottom that says if name main, and then it has a little bit of code afterwards. What essentially it says is that if you try to run this file as a standalone, and Python is trying to find this magical main, right, which is where to start, even if the name of the file is not main, it's saying, well, just do the following. So in other words, even if you can't find where to start, this is the instructions for what to do. So this is kind of a little thing you will sometimes see. It's not hurting anybody. It's not, you know, it's not any kind of complicated code. Even in fact, if you delete it, it will still work in PyCharm, but it's just kind of an extra precaution in case you want to be able to execute this file outside of PyCharm, right? If later on you're like, I'm in terminal and I want to show off my wonderful skills. I don't want to pop open PyCharm. I just want to run it from command line. You will be able to run this file without having PyCharm open, just because you already have this little bit of code that gives special instructions on what to do. All right, makes sense. But for now, we can go ahead and delete it. So you can either, you know, do Control A to select everything, or you can highlight it with your mouse. We don't need any of it. You can just delete it. Again, if you do not have main.py, you can create one. You can call it whatever you want. If you already have main.py, we're just going to use it. We're going to use this file, you know, for fun. I'm going to delete today.py. I was just creating it for demo purposes. So I'm just going to leave main.py. All right. So everybody has main.py open. We can start playing with PyCharm and getting to know how to use this IDE. It's actually one of my favorites. I love JetBrains products. JetBrains actually makes IDEs for a whole slew of languages. It has one for Visual Basic. It has one for Ruby. It has one for JavaScript. Obviously for Java, IntelliJ is one of the most like industry leaders. So a lot of different ones. They're all very similar, which is nice because when you're switching from one language to another, you don't have to relearn a new IDE. They're very similar. So I like using their products, and it's very intuitive. Now, if you guys have right now a white background, so as you guys can see, my PyCharm is black, but if you guys have a white background, there is a view. So go to view and you can say appearance. And wait, am I in the right place? Okay, sorry, no. That's not it. All right, I'm gonna find later because I forgot where you can change the appearance of it. It's been a while. So during break, I'll look it up and I'll let you know how to turn on the black mode. Or if one of you finds it before me, you can put in the channel.
Yeah, you can go to PyCharm and then preferences.
I know it's through preferences, but I thought there was a way here to turn it on quickly. Weird. Did they remove it for some reason? Maybe I'm used to the professional edition. That's why they don't have it. Okay, maybe it's in professional. You can go through view, but here not. I guess not.
Right upper corner, sign gear.
Right upper corner. Wait. My computer just weirded out on me.
Mm.
Come on, PyCharm, come back.
It's not that important, I guess, white or black.
Okay, hold on. Let me close it because it's having an issue. Huh, what happened to my PyCharm? If you guys,
You were in the Zen mode. I think it covers the whole screen.
no, I mean, it wouldn't even let me turn anything on and off.
On the left top, PyCharm preference and appearance in preference.
If you click on the gear icon
Yes.
on the right,
Is
you
it
can
being,
Drop.
choose the dark color mode from there.
so
Yeah.
hold on, you guys, unfortunately, I don't see how to turn this thing off. What is it doing?
I think function F11 brings you back to the main screen.
You think so? Because for some reason, it's not doing anything right now for me. Nope.
Oh, excuse me. Try go to window, I think. And then window, can you?
No, it's not letting me do anything. My PyCharm
Okay.
completely gave up on me.
You were in presentation mode. Go to view.
I'm
and
just gonna
exit
do
the
this.
Yeah,
presentation.
tool windows, or appearance view, then appearance, and then click toolbar, window bars, and then everything.
Weird. Why did it do that?
So exit the additional mode, some kind of. So go to view.
Appearance, yes, and
then
navigation bar.
No,
exit
but it's
distraction-free
turned
mode.
on and off my.
On the
uh,
second.
Maybe it's distraction-free mode. Oh,
Mhm.
oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know that was the thing. I'm learning with you guys today. How did I get into it? Did everybody see what I did to get into it?
Not
That was a magic.
No
I did the same thing. How did you get it back? Sorry.
Yeah, see, I don't know how it happened. So I went to view appearance and then
I think you put the Zen mode on.
it
That's how it happened.
it said distraction free mode, and I said exit distraction free mode. So for
Okay.
example, it was like this. Well, it was worse than this. I don't know how I did it. But when I went back and I said appearance, I said exit distraction free mode.
Got
And-
it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. But anyways, if you go to PyCharm preferences and then you go to appearance here, you can choose a whole bunch of themes. And actually you can go and you can download more. So if you go here, get more themes, you can download additional ones. But mine is actually just Dracula, which is a very funky name, but it's just makes my background black so that it doesn't hurt my eyes. And I know most developers prefer black background. So if you're one of those people who likes to kind of be dark and mysterious, you can choose Dracula mode. All right, cool. So we're here. The cool thing about this is that we're already ready to essentially write code. We can immediately write it and execute it. So I guess let's start from the classic, right? Let's start from hello world. I think that's what everybody does the first time. So in Python, it's very easy to output anything into the console. You're just going to use the print function. And as you can see, as soon as I enter 2-3 characters, it auto-completes for me. And that's that beauty of IDE. So we're going to go ahead and type print. Now, I always encourage everybody in my class to be lazy. In this case, being lazy is good. And I know that most people are like, you're taught through your life that lazy is bad. But here, when you use autocomplete, when you use shortcuts, it actually helps you avoid making typos and helps you avoid making bad indentations. And in Python, it's very important to have correct indentation and correct spelling of all of your words, of all of your code. Even if you make one typo, like one for example, you do capital P instead of lowercase p, or you put an L instead of an I, it's not going to work. So it's good to be lazy. It's good to type in a few characters and then use autocomplete to finish the rest of your code. That way, you know for sure that your IDE knows what, what you're trying to do. Like it basically collaborates and says, yes, I understand. I think I know what you're trying to do. This is how you do it properly. So go ahead and try to be lazy, try to use autocomplete. Again, in order for it to autocomplete, you can just type in a few characters. As you can see right now, it's not auto-completing for me. So what you can do is you can also kind of recall it. You can say, wait, I want it back. You can press down Control and space, and it will do it for you there. So again, you can either type it, right? So you can either start by typing it and it's going to bring it up. But if that doesn't do it, so for example, it went away right now, you can do Control space and it's going to autocomplete for you. Very cool. Now in Python, there is no semicolons. You don't have to worry about, blocks and defining, curly brackets. What you do need to worry about is indentation. So here we only have one line of code. We don't have to worry about indentation. But if we start creating more lines of code, then we have to be very careful how they line up. So you can't just, take a space to the left or take a space to the right. They do have to line up one after the other. So here we have print. Let's print hello world. Or maybe instead of world, we can say hello and somebody from the class, whatever you want to say hello to. So hello, everyone, right? And then after you have your code, two ways you can execute this code. One is you can right click on this file. So I'm right clicking and over here you have run main, right? So you can do that. Or you might have already noticed over here in the top corner, it actually already has a default main selected, right? Has main. And so you can just press the button here and run it. So when you run the button, it's going to pop open a new panel for you from the bottom, right? The execution panel. And here you can see that it actually did print out the statement that we wanted it to. So essentially here it is. It's saying I'm running your main. It's giving the full path, right? And then it's saying, hello, everyone. Very nice.
So in Python, double parentheses or single parentheses doesn't
matter. If you, not parentheses, I think you mean quotes, right? So
quotes, yeah.
As long as they're in pair, like you can't do double on one side and single on the other, doesn't matter. In fact, oftentimes we will alternate. So for example, let's say inside here, I want to say something like, my name is, and then I want to put quotes, right? Ellie, right? Something like that. So I can actually have quotes around something inside quotes. And to do that, we alternate. So I can actually have single quotes inside my double quotes and they'll be treated as part of the text. I can also do the opposite. I can put double quotes around Ellie, and then I can put single quotes around my text, excuse me, and it will still work, right? So it will escape it. So let's run it again. So you can see now it has the quotes inside it, right? Does that make sense? Now, if for some reason you're in a situation where you just need to use only single quotes or double quotes, can't think of a good example right now, but sometimes you just have too many, all kinds of quotes flying around, you actually can escape quotes. So for example, here I have doubles. You can actually put a slash and then it lets Python know that this specific double quote should be treated as text. It should not be treated as a double quote. And that way, what you're going to get is something like this. See, it actually treats those double quotes as part of the text. So it doesn't worry about all the weirdnesses inside it. Questions? All right, now, obviously the same shortcuts as in any editor still work. So I've been, changing my code and now I'm like, oops, I don't know what I did. You can use Command Z or Control Z. So on the Windows Control Z, on the Mac Command Z to undo. You can undo things, right? So you can go ahead and put your stuff back and that's perfectly fine. All right. So we have our hello statement. Now let's see how we can maybe generate some stuff, or we can, calculate some stuff in Python. So first things first, what if I want to store some information, right? So I want to maybe store someone's age, right? So very easy to create a container to store data. Of course, almost in any coding language, when we create that container, we're going to call it a variable, right? So essentially a variable is just a name for a container, right? Somewhere in memory of your computer, right, there's going to be a little bit of space allocated to store this data temporarily, right? You're not writing it to the hard disks, it's just in memory. But because there's a lot of data flying around, right? Just imagine like a refrigerator, right? A large refrigerator with lots of Tupperware. You can't see what's inside. You'll label your Tupperware. You'll put, here I have my, macaroni, and here I have last night's chicken. So you're going to put little notes on it. So that's what a variable name is. So we want to pick a variable name that is descriptive. So we don't want to use letters like, for example, A or J. They have sometimes usage. So for example, if you're creating something disposable or like an iterator, it's common to call it I for iterator, right? Or if you're, maybe performing some kind of calculation and you're storing width or height, it's common for people to use W or H, but it's very rare. Most of the time, we try to have self-documenting code, and self-documenting code essentially means we don't want to put comments to try to explain what our code does. We want to create code in a way where a person looking at the code immediately knows what the actual code does. So if we're trying to store somebody's age, we're actually going to call the container age. If we're trying to store somebody's weight, we're actually going to call the container weight. If we're trying to store somebody else's, address, right? Then we're actually going to call it address. Not because there's a specific type of data in there, but because it describes the data that's going to be stored inside in the most self-documenting way. Questions about that? All right, let's keep going. So we're going to store age. Now, as any woman, I'm not going to tell you guys my real age. So of course, as any woman, I am permanently 29 until I retire. And as you can see, as soon as I say enter, I don't have to put a semicolon. I don't have to specify what kind of data is going to go into my variable. That's it. That's all you have to do. So on the left side, you provided a name for your container, for your little allocated memory, right? And on the right side, you specified what you're going to be storing. Easy peasy. All right. Now, same thing. If you wanted to store somebody else's name, you would say name. And obviously name. Now, strings, or in other words, words, right? In Python, words are called strings. Strings need to be surrounded by quotes, just like we did here, right? They need to be surrounded. If you do not surround a string by quotes, your Python will automatically assume that it's a name of either a variable or a function or a class, right? Which is an object. So it's going to try to look for some kind of code with that same, naming, that same collection of letters, characters. So that's how we differentiate in Python between, hey, this is data that I want you to store, and hey, this is the name of the container that has the data that I previously stored. So here, we have on the left, no quotes, because that's the name of the container. And here on the right, we're going to put quotes. And just to mix things up, next time around, I'm going to do single quotes because I did double quotes beforehand. So you guys can see you can mix and match. And I'm going to put, my name. So I'm going to put my full name just because I want to play around with it later. All right. So there you go. Again, as soon as I press enter, great. Now, you might see that there's a little squiggly line under my last name. And the reason for that is PyCharm also checks spelling. There is actually a way to disable this. So if you don't want Python to constantly check your spelling, you can disable this. You can just go to more actions and it brings up a little window and you can uncheck it. I actually do like to have it enabled because anytime that I write a comment or just typing even code, if I misspell something, it alerts me. And then, it's not It's not an error. It's just a little kind of reminder. Hey, I don't know this word. Maybe you want to check it for spelling. In this case, I do know what my last name is spelled like, so I'm just going to ignore this. But again, if you see something like this, as long as it's not red, even if it's yellow, as long as it's not red, you don't have to worry about it. It's not a mistake. Your code is not broken. It's just like a little built-in extra that PyCharm offers just for convenience sakes. But again, you can completely ignore it. You don't have to pay attention to it. It's perfectly fine. All right, so here we have our age, here we have name. Now, what else can we store? What do you guys think? What's another data type that we can store?
Wait.
Okay, weight. All right, let's do weight. Now, weight, usually we like to use decimals, right? So we're gonna use something like, I don't know, let's do
Floats, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You jumped the gun, you're too fast. So I don't think we're gonna do kilograms. So let's do pounds. Let's do 130 and a half. I don't know, 130 and a half. Now, funny enough, in Python, when you write a decimal, it's actually immediately stored as a double. Okay, and somebody said float. It will actually store it as a double. In other words, it will. The reason between the difference between a float and a double is the amount of bytes that are being allocated in order to store this decimal. And by default, Python does a double. Now, for folks who kind of are familiar with older languages, right, like Pascal and like C, back then memory was expensive, hard disk was expensive, it was all expensive. I always think back to my very first digital camera, and I remember buying a memory stick for my digital camera that had 64 megabytes, not giga, megabytes. All right. And it was like huge. I will never fill this up. Huge, right? And now you can have one photo that's actually bigger than that. So the idea is that over time, memory became very cheap. And so no longer do we deal with floats in PyCharm, in Python. Now we just default to double. If you still want to, for whatever reason, have it stored as a float, you can actually put a little F in front of it. All right. And as soon as you put a float, wait, why isn't it working for me? Not working for me. I mean, you can cast it also, but there's a way that you can, wait, are you putting it at the front or at the end? I have to remember. See, as you can see, I very rarely do it, so I don't even remember how to do it. I'm gonna have to look it up, but actually, let's do it together. We can look it up together. Is it F in front or F in the back? There is a way to do it if you put a little F, but even this thing doesn't tell me how, just because it's so not common, you guys. So essentially, I'll have to look it up. I wanted to say it's in the front, but so it's going to store it as a double. But if the second way to do it is to cast it to a float. So you can say float around it, and that's going to store it as a float. So in other words, it's going to throw away the extra bytes that are not necessary because it's a very small decimal. But again, memory is cheap. I recommend not to worry about it. So there we go. This is a double. All right. And then what else can we do? I can't come up with anything else. We can also create an object and store it, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. So here we have a whole bunch of data. The cool thing about IDE, right, is that we can actually use the autocomplete feature to kind of remind ourselves, what can we do with this thing? So let's start with age. With age, we can say age dot, and it's immediately going to pop open a whole bunch of kind of options for us, right? So it's going to pop open a whole bunch. So for example, we can find out the bit count or bit length of this age variable, right? So for example, if we do bit count and we say print, right, like this. So we're going to put print, and in parentheses, we're going to put age.bit count. When we run this, it's going to tell us how many bits are being used to store age. right? Does everybody remember the difference between bytes and bits, right? So a byte is 8 bits, right? So it's saying I'm using 4 bits to store the number 29, right? And if we do the same thing with weight, and we can say dot, again, same thing, right? It says, oh, I recognize this thing. I know what this is. This is all the things that I can do with it. Now, as you can see here, it doesn't really tell us how to count how many bits, but you can actually check, is it an integer? So if you, for example, store 130.00, right? You can say, is it an integer? And it will actually try to cut off the extra zeros to let you know, is it an integer or not? So we can try that right now. We can say is integer, right? And we can run it. And it's going to say, no, it's not an integer. It has that extra bit after the decimal, right? It has an extra bit. So if somebody stored it this way, right? It's going to say, yes, true. It is an integer. Somebody decided to put extra zeros, but I can see that it can be converted to an integer. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
All right. So again, the beauty of IDE is that we can save our own mind. We don't have to remember every single little thing. What we do have to remember is just pressing a dot and then looking through autocomplete. So again, let's do the last thing. Name is the one that's going to give us the most bang for our buck. So we're going to say name dot. And then for name, there's actually a lot of options. There's a huge amount of options. Here we go, right? So for name, we can do a whole bunch of things. So in this case, I think I'm going to pick something very easy. I think I just want to have it all in uppercase letters. So there is actually a function called upper. You might have to scroll to the, a little bit. It's closer to the bottom, or you can just type in the first few letters and it's going to filter for you and only show you the functions that actually have that letter in them. And so if you just type in U, it will say upper, right? So you can double click on it. Now, some of you might think, Ellie, what does this thing do? Well, if you just put your mouse over it, you don't have to do anything to it. You just kind of put it over it and leave it. In a few seconds, there's going to be a little documentation window that's going to pop up. And it's going to say returns a copy of a string converted to uppercase. So it's very easy for you to immediately say, oh, okay, I know what this thing does. So sometimes when you don't know what something is, so let's pick something else. Let's say something that doesn't make sense to us. Maybe, let's say split. Like, what does split do? I don't know. Let's do split, right? You can hold your mouse over it and it's going to give you like a very nice, what does it do, right? So it returns a list of substrings in a string using separator as a separator string. Sometimes the definition isn't very obvious either. But in this case, what this is going to do is it will let you take this word that you have or collection of words and divide them into pieces. That's essentially what it says. It's going to divide it into pieces for us based on some kind of character. So you can divide it by space, which is the most common, or you can actually divide it by anything else. So, you can divide it by a specific letter or a specific character or a specific punctuation or whatnot. So once again, let's go back. So I'm going to say name.upper, and then I'm going to run it. And we're going to see what it does. For some reason, it didn't execute. Oh, print. Let my print. All right. Now, after doing this over and over, you might start thinking to yourself, this is kind of annoying, right? I have to, every time I want to see what a piece of code does, I have to put print around it. And I don't want to keep putting print around it. For example, next time Ellie's going to ask me to say name.split, and she's going to put quote, space, quote inside the parentheses, right? Name.split, quote, space, quote. What is that going to do? Well, I won't be able to find out if I don't do a print, which is kind of a bummer. I think it's a bummer. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do like a little, it's kind of a little fake workaround. I'm going to put the word pass at the bottom. Now, the password doesn't actually do anything. It's just a placeholder in Python. It's just kind of like a anytime you don't want your code to run and immediately exit out on the last line, you can create an extra line so that when you're working through your code one line at a time, it has somewhere to go before it exits out. It's kind of like this little pause that you can put in there, or a placeholder. So I'm going to put pass. And the reason I'm going to do that is I want to set some breakpoints. So we're now getting into the debugging. So if I want to see what a piece of code does without having to print it, just to kind of see what it does, right? So what I can do is anywhere in this margin on the left, anywhere at all, I can put a little breakpoint. So this little marble right here is called a breakpoint. And what it's going to do is when I run my code, it's going to pause on that line. And it's going to open up an extra different type of view panel over here, where I'm actually going to be able to see what all my code does. And I'm also able to play around with my code in real time while the code is being executed. So let's see what that looks like. So go ahead and anywhere in your code, anywhere at all, go ahead and put a breakpoint. You can put several. I'm going to put one here and here. You can put it anywhere. We're just trying to see how it works. And then after that, the only difference in order to get these breakpoints to work is instead of pressing this triangle, this run button, we're going to press the one right next to it. It looks like a little, I don't know what it is, like a ladybug or some kind of tick. I don't know. But this bug, we're just going to press it and it's going to put us in debug mode. So again, as you can see, a different panel opened up. The previous one was called run. This is a debug now. And also what we see right now is that there's a blue line across our code. So this is where the code paused, right? So we're actually right now still running and our code is running, but it's paused in one place. So I decided not to go further, but it's live. It's actually being executed. It's kind of like, pressing like a timer stop for it. And also what I always find the most useful on the bottom over here, it tells us exactly what the value of each variable is. If there was objects, it would show us the object and all of, the things that are inside it. If there are some calculations that need to be performed, we can also see them here, right? Without having a print statement. So all of these other print statements that we put here, we actually do not need them. We actually can remove them, and then we can see what's actually in that code without even having a print statement. So for example, I don't know what name.split does right now, right? We don't know. Well, I mean, I do know, but we haven't looked at it. We haven't seen it. What I can do is I can highlight it just like I did right now. And then I'm going to press this button right here. It says evaluate expression, right? So again, highlight it and then say evaluate expression over here on the bottom. And then all I have to do is say evaluate. And it's actually going to show me what will be the result of that operation. So it's kind of like a mini editor. Sorry, y'all, for 1 second. Okay. So I don't know if you guys heard a second ago, like a weird sound. You'll hear it sometimes during the course. My younger son has type 1 diabetes, and so that's his monitor goes off whenever his sugar is either high or low. So if you hear that sound, most of the time I'll just check and then ignore it, but sometimes I might need to pause and run away for a few seconds. Yes, somebody raised their hand.
Breakpoint on the window.
What on the window?
Yes, on the window.
Right here?
Yeah, this is for Max, but mine is the window. How to make the breakpoint?
Is it the window? Did you double click? Does it look like this?
Yes, I want to make the like 11, right? The black, the dog, red dog. I want to make it. How can I do it on the window? It's not the iMac.
Oh, on Windows. Okay, I understand. Yeah. It's the same thing. So for you, it probably looks white instead of black, right? So does it look like this for you?
No, I want to make a breakpoint. The
Oh, I understand, but does it
breakpoint.
look like this for you? So
Yeah.
for you, there's going to be a margin right here. Again, you're going to look where it's going to start turning gray. So instead of white, you need it to look gray, and then you can
Yes.
click there. So click in the gray area.
Got it. Yeah.
Did you find it?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, if you guys don't have line numbers, right, you can
Yes.
enable them. You can enable them. So again, in that same gray area, instead of left clicking, right click on it, and then you can say show line numbers, and then you'll have line numbers, right? And then the area between the line numbers and the actual text, the gray area, that's where you click to set a breakpoint. All right, make sense?
Yes.
Awesome.
And
Perfect.
on the debugger, my evaluate expression is gray out. I cannot click on it. How can I turn it on?
Right. So your code actually has to be active. So now that you have a breakpoint, when you're
Yes.
running debug, that's when evaluate expression is going to become live. So for example, if I stop my code right now and then I open debug, it also doesn't work for me because I'm not actively running my code. It
Yes.
only works when you're
Mhm.
actively running your code. So let me just put my thing back. It hurts my eyes when it's very bright. Okay, so again, once you have a breakpoint, you just click debug, and then you wait for it to kind of do its thing and pause, right? So as soon as you see this blue line across your code, you know it's in debug mode, you know that it paused, and that's where you're gonna have this editor where you can like play around with your stuff. And you don't have to do it for code that's below your breakpoint. You can do it for any code. You can do it over here, and anything. You can do it for any amount of code. All right, so here we have nine-out split, and you can do evaluate expression. All right, so easy peasy. Now, looking at this, looking at what it's doing, it's telling me here's your result, all right? And that unfolds it, but that doesn't matter. It says, here's your result, and it says list, and it has 2 after it. It says list 2. And then it says something really weird, square brackets, quotes, Ellie, comma, quotes, Yamposkaya, right? And then what do you think it did? Like, what does this look like to you? What do you think it did? Now, look at the name of the function split, and then what do you think happened?
It separated first name and last name.
It separated them, and I told it to separate them by empty space. So it went through my entire name, and it looked for an empty space. And when it found it, made a cut, right? It made a cut through that empty space. Now, here's the funny part, right? What do you think will happen if I put, let's see, say the letter A inside there? So instead of space, right? Right now I have a space. I put a letter A. What do you think is going to happen?
I'll give you an error.
Print a day.
So I have name dot split, and instead of empty space, I say A, right? So it's not going to be an error. It's going to have 0 problems with me putting A in there. What do you think is going to happen? You guys, you can just speak up. You don't have to worry about raising your hand. Open forum.
So it's gonna divide from the first A on your last name, I guess.
Okay.
Every time it hits an A.
Okay, so we have one says that it's going to be first A, which is a really great guess. Second one says every A, also a really great guess. So this is actually exactly why I like to use evaluate expression, because sometimes you think you know, but you want to check, right? Especially when you're writing a lot of code, you're going to be working with a lot of packages. And it's very hard to remember what each one does. So it's good to test things out. So here, let's try it out. Let's say A and evaluate. In this case, something really funky happens, right? I have this like, what happened? So now I have a list of 4 pieces. There's going to be 4 pieces. And okay, that made sense. But I have my first piece, second piece, third piece. And then what happened here? Why is there nothing in there? What happened? Let's try to figure it out. What did it not like? Or is this a mistake? Why? Why did it do this? What do you guys think? First of all, is it a mistake? Is it a mistake?
No, it found ace in your first and last name and replaced it and split it without that ace.
So
It's
remember,
because of maybe the comma after Y.
oh, no, this comma is here only because it's saying that this is a next piece. So this is the original string over here on the left. That's the original string. So what actually happened is exactly the same thing as was with a space, right? So let's put a space back and see again what happened when there was a space. Right.
So that empty string is the space between your first and last name, I guess.
Right. So when we said to split by space, it found a space, and that's where it cut. So the space got taken out, and what was remaining was whatever was on the left side and whatever was on the right side. But the space got yanked out. Right. So when I put the letter A inside, it did exactly the same thing. It yanked out all the A's. And whatever was on the left and whatever was on the right was what got stored. Now, unfortunately, we have the last character in my string, an A, right? So the last character is an A. And so when it went to yank it out, there was nothing on the right side, right? So instead it was like, well, there's nothing on the right side, but I guess nothing is still a good answer. So that's what it said. It said nothing on the right side. That's why there's nothing in there. It's an empty string, nothing. So sometimes that's what happens. If you're cutting at the very end or at the very beginning. So for example, if I put E right now, then it's going to say there's nothing on the left. So nothing string, and then everything else. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm gonna mess with you guys. All right, so my name, my first name, actually has 2 E's inside it. So what do you think is going to happen if I put a lowercase e right here? What do you think? Now that we know how it acts, right? You put a character, it yanks it out, and then it splits everything to the left and to the right into separate pieces. If I put a lowercase e inside here, what do you think will happen? Again, this is the original string. What do you think will happen?
It will break just by the lowercase e.
It's case sensitive.
It is case sensitive. You're absolutely right. So like I said, I am messing with you guys. So that's exactly the point. Python is very much case sensitive. So you need to always treat uppercase characters and lowercase characters like completely separate letters. It completely doesn't understand, that they're the same one. Now, if for whatever reason for whatever reason, I did wanted to split it by every E in my name, how do you think I would need to do it? So if I actually wanted to split it at the first E and at the second E, what do you think I would need to do in order for that to work? What do you think? Don't think about code. Just if you were like, I really wanted to treat all E's the same. What do you think you would need to do?
Say lowercase e, comma, capital E.
Unfortunately, it doesn't let you specify a list. What it can let you specify is a substring. So you actually don't have to split by 1 character. You can split by 5 characters or 10 characters. So any pattern, right? You can specify a pattern, but it doesn't let you specify a list. What you can do is you can actually take the original string, so your original collection of words, right? And you can cast it either all to uppercase or all to lowercase, right? So you can just equalize the case. So if you know your combination of words has all the different mixed cases, before trying to cut it or do any kind of transformation on it, you just need to homogenize the case. And we already know how to do that. Do you guys remember how to convert all this into one single case? Do you remember?
Yeah, just use uppercase or lowercase.
Yep, upper or lower. And I'm glad that you guys saw that. So yes, there is upper, but there's also lower. In fact, there's actually also capitalized, right? So in other words, if I right now, I know that I have my first letter is capitalized and I cast it all to lowercase just so I can split it into pieces. Later on, if I want to recapitalize, I have a function for that. So I don't lose anything. I just have to remember like, oh, I made it lowercase. Now I have to make it uppercase again. And there's also a thing called title. So title, somewhere inside here, it will actually capitalize every word. So versus capitalize will capitalize only the first letter in the sentence. Title will treat it like a title of a book. And so every word in that sentence will get capitalized. So you have abilities, you can do a lot of very fancy stuff. All right. So As you guys can see, this is, again, a string, and string is an object or a type that comes with a whole bunch of utility functions right out of the box. Let's quickly go through them. Some of them are very useful. You are actually going to be, somebody already mentioned this, but you're actually going to be using this function right here, lower, all the time. Because what happens is, as we go and we start writing tests, we're going to be pulling data from the website, and we're going to be verifying that certain things are, equal, that certain things match our expectations, and we will be casting things into lowercase or uppercase, doesn't matter. Usually people prefer lower, just to make sure, like I said, when we do these transformations, when we do the split things, or we search for something, or we, compare things, just to make sure that, yes, both of them are the same meaning wise. So in other words, we know somebody says, my name is Bob, and the welcome message is supposed to also say, hey, welcome, Bob, right? Well, maybe the person entered his name lowercase, they forgot to capitalize, but our code will take that name and always capitalize it. So we want to compare, right? Is it still the same string? The meaning of the string should be the same, even though one is lowercase and one uppercase. So when we're comparing, we would have to equalize case. We would cast it all to lowercase so we can compare oranges to oranges, essentially. Did I lose anybody on that? All right. Now, also, we have a whole bunch of functions that let us answer questions. There's this concept of a Boolean in Python. It actually exists in any coding language. So a Boolean essentially means, is it true or is it false? When something is either 0 or a 1, it's considered a Boolean. So like black or white, right? So anything that only can go one way or another way is considered a Boolean. And in fact, in Python, there's this concept of truthiness. It actually also exists in JavaScript and probably other languages as well. I think Ruby has it as well, but truthiness. So Python will actually not only treat true and false as Boolean, but as I said before, it will treat 0 and 1 like a Boolean. So in this case, 0 means nothing. It means false, right? Is there something there? No, false. So it's a false, right? And 1 will be treated like a true. So is there something there? Yes, there's a 1 thing there. So that's a true. In fact, any number would be treated as true, and 0 is a false. So it's basically, if something exists, it's true. If something doesn't exist, it's false. I bring this up because it makes our code much easier later on. For example, we're waiting for a user to provide input and we're not sure whether they did or not. We can actually ask, is there input inside? And if the input is an empty string, it will automatically return false. We don't have to cast it from one thing to another. We don't have to worry about, oh, did they say true or false? We can just ask, is it empty? And if it's empty, it's false. And if there's something in there, then it's true. So like a very, very nice concept of truthiness. So again, if it's an empty string, it's false because it's nothing. If there's anything in there, it's true. So why did I bring this up? All of these functions right here that start with the word is, you can use them to answer questions for you. So is whatever is inside this string a space? Is whatever's inside here all in lowercase, right? Is it a decimal? Is it, there's also supposed to be in, yeah, is it alphanumeric, right? Alphanumeric, is it all alphabetic? So for example, if I create a string like this, I do ABC 1, 2, 3, right? And then I say does is alphanumeric. What do you think is going to happen?
True.
It's going to say
False.
true. True.
Uh,
Alphabet, so alphabetical and numerical, right?
Mhm.
But if I just say alphabetic, so just alpha, it's going to be
It's
false.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So so the awesome, but also the bad part of Python, right? So it depends on how you look at it, is that in Python, as you can see, when you're defining a container for a variable, you can put anything inside it. Just because I called it age doesn't mean there's a guarantee that there will be a number stored inside. I can just as easily put a sentence inside it and say, I don't want to disclose my age, or none of your business, or why are you asking, right? I don't have to put a number in there. And so when you get that data, you really don't know, is it really a number? Like what's in there? Because somebody could have put pretty much anything in there. There's no guarantees. In Java, when you define a container, you say, It's an integer, it's a number. The only thing that can go in that container is a number. If somebody tries to put anything else in there, things blow up and there's errors. In Python, it will be like, me, I don't care. I'm a container. You put something wrong inside me, yes, your problem. So it's very useful to have these questions. So when you get your data, you're like, I don't know what's in there. Let's check. And you can check, is it alphabetical? Or is it some, is it a decimal? Is it alphanumerical? Or it might be just a whole bunch of gibberish and exclamation marks, in which case you're like, bad data, try again, right? Makes sense. All right. You can also do a whole bunch of other things. Obviously, I'm going to come back to this awesome function right here, format. It's actually one of my favorites, but you can also count how many of a something is in there. As you guys complete this course and you go to interviews, oftentimes during the interview, they'll have a technical challenge, right? They'll ask you to write a little bit of code. And honestly, Python is one of the best languages to do coding challenges in, because it has all of these functions built in. And so you can immediately, just with what's built into Python, find out and do a whole bunch of crazy things. And we'll do one of those later on today. All right. So for example, if somebody says, we want to find out, if this string has a substring inside it. So for example, if I can't come up with something like if elephant has N inside it or something like that, or L inside it, you can actually go here and say count, and it will tell you how many occurrences of that is inside that string. So you don't even have to do any kind of loops to try to see if there's any kind of match or anything like that. You already have a count. You just essentially say what it is you want to find inside your string. Like, what are you looking for? And if it finds it, it will tell you, I have 5 or 1. If it doesn't, 0. Very cool. You can also see if something ends with something or starts with something. So you're specifically looking at the end or the start, right? Or you can just see if you find it. Funny enough, if you look at count and you look at find, they're actually very similar. Count will tell you how many times. Find will just return true or false, but they basically do the same thing. And then if you look at index and find, they're actually the same function. So index actually is find is index. And what happens is, if index finds something, it will tell you where it found it specifically. And then if it doesn't find it, it returns a -1, but they're pretty much the same function. All right, let's see. Replace is a very useful one. Again, we're going to use a lot in testing. So when you want to take a string and then you want to replace a piece of it with something else. Did somebody ask a question? No? Okay. And then one of my favorite ones that I use all the time, like ridiculously all the time, is strip. So again, when we're starting to deal with HTML and we're pulling text in from the website, oftentimes there's going to be a lot of white space padding on the left and on the right. And what you can do is you can actually strip off that white space using this strip function. So if you have something like this, where you pull it out and you have a whole bunch of space here and there, you can actually use strip and it will completely remove all those spaces. All right. What else? I'm forgetting. We talked about title already. Okay, the rest of them are just kind of, so R means right. So you're, for example, looking for index from the right rather than from the left. So basically from the back. So anything that has the letter R in it, it's just basically the opposite direction. So I'm not going to go over them. All right. So I said I'm going to come back to this format function right here, format. Now, the reason I love it is because you can actually create very complex strings by using this function. And so I wanted to show you how to do that. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to once again put print statement. This is going to become very important to us later. So, and what we're going to do inside here, actually, let's put the word message, right? So we're going to create a little print message. And then right above it, we're going to create that message. So we're going to say message equals And then in quotes, it doesn't matter if you use single or double. We're going to start writing out our message. We're going to say, hello, my name is, and then usually right here is where we want to put our name, right? So we're going to put curly brackets. So it's kind of like a placeholder, curly brackets. Hello, my name is, I don't know, something. And I am, again, placeholder, years old. All right, something like that. Now, that looks pretty weird, but essentially what we did is we created a template where we can insert code, right? We can insert code into it. So here we have a sentence. Now, why am I teaching you this? Whenever your code fails in the future, you want to know why it failed. And so this way you can embed messages into your code in the future. And you can tell yourself in the stack trace, right, as it fails, in that console where the actual failure message gets printed out, what went wrong? You can leave yourself breadcrumbs to follow. So by creating these kind of templates, you can later on insert the variables into these curly brackets, right? You can insert variables and that way see what went wrong. So for example, you can say, I expected to see this, but instead I saw that. And then you can tell that the two things are not the same. And we use the same kind of template mechanism for that. So here we're going to say, hello, my name is, and then what do you think is supposed to go inside here? So what do you think, what do you think goes into this placeholder from everything else that we have on the screen? What do you think?
Name.
Name.
You guys are absolutely right. Name goes in there, right? All right. And then what do you think goes inside here? And I am?
Age.
Age.
All right, perfect. You guys are great. All right. And now here is where the magic of the format function comes into play. So at the end, we're going to say format, all right? And we're going to put brackets, and we're going to say, when you see the string name, use name, right? I know that looks weird, but hey, it is what it is. And then when you see the string age, use age. Oops, sorry. All right. Looks a little weird, but basically we're saying wherever you see name, use the name. Whenever you see age, use age. Now, do we have to say name and age here? No, I actually could have used anything. I could have said something like old, and then said old age. Oh, excuse me. I did it in the wrong place. Old. Right? Or I could have said years. Years. Doesn't matter. But the thing is, you need to line up whatever you put here with whatever you put here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now let's see how that works. So we actually, we can actually stop the debugger. We don't really need it. And we can just run this thing. So we can just run it. And we should see a nice little message at the end. So it says, hello, my name is, it has my name, and I am 29 years old. All right. So did that work for you guys?
Yes,
What?
but we don't need
Right,
this
perfect.
function format.
Yes, it did.
We don't need it. There's actually a workaround as well, but we'll get there. All right. So can you tell me what's wrong with my code? Why is my code all broken?
They have extra space.
I'm sorry, one more time.
It is have extra space.
Yeah, too much space. Now, how do I fix this?
Use the function split.
But okay, split is a good one. You can split, but when we split, it creates a whole bunch of pieces, right? And I don't want a whole bunch of pieces. I just want to get rid of space. So do you...
We should have a command to
Right strip or left strip.
All right,
Use
so
strip.
not split. Yes, strip. Strip.
Strip. Yeah, I mean strip. Not
No,
space.
good. I'm glad you got it. All right, so strip. Now the question is, where does this command go? Where do I put this strip? Let's pretend that I want to keep this the way it is. I don't want to mess with that piece. So somewhere in here, I want to be able to put strip. Where do you think it's going to go?
In format after name, we have to put dot and strip.
Yeah, so this is the actual container with the data, right? This is the container with the data. And what we can do is before we assign it, we can modify it quickly. So we're going to take out the data and we're going to say strip. All right. And by the way, by default, it already is going to strip spaces. That's like the default value. So if you're stripping spaces, you don't have to specify any kind of other character. Does that make sense? So if you wanted to, for example, strip stars off or underscores or I don't know, slashes, you could put quotes and put a slash or underscore, whatever. But if you're stripping spaces, it already thinks that's the default. So you don't have to do anything. All right, so let's see if that works. Did it work? Did it help?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Awesome. Now, somebody brought up the fact that format function is kind of no longer the thing. It's still being kept around because it's been used for years since like Python 2 in all the code. So they're trying to keep the code backwards compatible. But there is now a new way to do a format. So we are going to see what that looks like. There's a shortcut in PyCharm. If you do Command D, if you're on a Mac, or if you're on a Windows, Control D, it will actually duplicate a line of code for you. So that's how I'm doing this magic right now. All right. That's how I'm able to write this code very, very quickly. I'm duplicating. So you don't have to highlight it. See, do you see how I did not highlight it? I did not do this. I just pressed my mouse anywhere on that line of code, doesn't matter where it is. And I did, again, on a Mac, Command D, on a Windows, Control D, and it duplicated it. Easy peasy. Now, the reason I like to do this is sometimes I want to keep code for later. So I don't want to get rid of it yet. I want to keep it as a reference for myself for later. But I also don't want to start writing a new line of code completely from scratch. So what I'll do is I'll duplicate my line of code and I'll comment it out. All right. Now in Python, if we want to comment something out, all we want to do is put a little, hash sign in front of it, or sharp if you're from, musical. So you just put a little hash sign in front, and it's going to comment it out. All right, that's very easy to do. Now, I'm going to try to teach you guys how to use shortcuts throughout this course. And the reason for that is that if you ever go to in-person like coding interview and you are doing, using IDE to do a coding challenge, oftentimes your interviewers will actually pay attention to how you use shortcuts because it actually lets them know how much experience you have coding. Most developers will use a lot of shortcuts. Most developers will do a lot of, hotkeys instead of trying to highlight or even selection. They will do selection using shortcuts. So the more shortcuts you use, the more you look kind of like you're you've been doing this forever and you're a pro. So just try to learn shortcuts from the very beginning. It gives you that like extra edge over the competition. I know it's silly, but it is what it is. So what I did is I duplicated using a shortcut, Command D or Control D, and then I commented out. There's actually a way to comment out using shortcuts as well. Again, you're going to use that Command key if you're on a Windows, if you're on a Mac, and that Control key if you're in a Windows. But in order to comment or comment a line of code, again, you don't need to highlight it. You can just put your mouse on that line of code and you can do Command, and then there's a slash. I think it's a slash. Is it a backslash? Slash. Basically where the question mark is. So Command and then slash. See, it uncommented. And if I do it again, it's going to comment it. Does that make sense? So that's the shortcut. If you want to do a whole bunch of code, let's like say I wanted to comment all of it, then you do have to highlight it. And again, you do Command slash and it comments it, or one more time and it uncomments it. Go ahead and try it. It's very easy to do, and obviously, very useful if you want to ever store code for later, but you don't actually need it to run right now. You'll usually do the comment uncomment method. All right, so this is where we started, but now we know it's not the most up-to-date hip way to do it. There's a better way. Now, the better way is instead of using a format command, just like this, we can remove this piece. This can go away. What we can do is we can put a little letter F in front. And as you can see, as soon as I put the letter F, every curly bracket started to glow. Did you guys see that? Started to glow. So this is the new format function. Now, instead of putting that format at the back, you can just put a little F in the front. And then what happens is whatever you put into the curly brackets, it gets converted into a variable. So now I don't have to do the name equals name and age equals age. I can just put the names of the variables and immediately they will be substituted into the string. So these two lines do exactly the same thing, but one just kind of looks nicer than the other. They use the same mechanism under the hood, completely the same. But here, this looks a little cleaner, I think, a little more fun to do. Questions, comments?
And if you put, I have a question, sorry. And if you put f in front of this string, so we need to provide exactly a variable name, right?
Exactly variable name, yes. And in fact, if I don't provide the exact variable name, you'll see that it has a little red underline after it. Here, let me zoom in a little bit. Do you see the red line? So it immediately recognizes that it's not a variable and it complains. So it won't let you, even if you try. All right, so
that format is not important.
It's still the same function. So for backwards compatibility, I still teach it because oftentimes if the code was created even like, maybe not a year ago, like a year and a half ago, you will still see lots of code with the format function. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you like start in a company and you're looking at legacy code or you're looking at something that was created a year and a half ago, you'll see a lot of the format function. So you should know what it does. But now all the hip kids are using this. All right, cool. So it's nice. We understand now how to store data. We understand now how to print data. And we understand how to, modify data using some of the built-in functions, right? Some of the built-in actions that are in Python. What about if we wanted to do some kind of weird, storing one inside the other? So let's see what we can do. Let's see, or even let's take it a step further. Let's build our own function. How about that? We'll build our own function. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, all of these are awesome. I like this whole, business of upper and this whole business of bit count. I want to create something of my own. I want to create something cool. Now, in order to define a function in Python, all you have to do is just say def for define, definition, definition of a function. And then you, again, just give it a name. So let's pick a name. What do we want it to do? Let's call it greeting. Okay, so we're going to call our function greeting. Now, all functions are different from variables because they have this input that they can take input. So they don't just do one thing. You can provide some input and then you can do a lot of things with that input. Now, if you don't need to put any input in, all you have to put is just a set of empty parentheses. You don't have to do anything fancy. But if you do want to provide some input to your function, you can actually stick it into those parentheses if it goes in there. So for now, we're just kind of fleshing out our function. We're going to leave that blank. But this is what differentiates a variable from a function. If it has parentheses after it, it's a function. If it doesn't have parentheses after it, it's just a variable. So if you're looking at code, somebody else's, and you're like, I wonder what this is, you'll know that if there's parentheses, like around parentheses after it, it's a function. If there's not, that it's a variable. So here, def greeting, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a little space and we're going to put a colon. Now, you actually don't need a space. Honestly, some people just like it, some people don't. It's up to you. It's up to you with the styling. So if you want to put a little space before the colon, great. If not, you can leave it. And then what's going to happen is this next line is the most important one, because when you press enter, it needs to indent. All right, it needs to indent. And it's very important that once you indent, all the rest of your code keeps the same indentation. So that's why don't do space, 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 space. Don't do that, because that's going to come and bite you. Okay, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen code where one little space is off and nothing works. So it's better to just trust your IDE to indent for you. And then once you indent some more, make sure that you stay lined up right to that indent. So don't do space, space, space. Let your IDE actually choose where you're going to start your code. So again, as soon as I said enter, it already indented for me. Don't try to make it less. Don't do this. That would be bad. And I'll show you in a little bit why. All right, so get greeting, def greeting. And now what does our greeting do? Our greeting is going to greet somebody. It's going to say something like, hey, let's do, hey, I'm happy to see you. All right. Now notice how it has little green at the front, a little green at the end. And if I hold my mouse over it, it says triple double quote string should be used for doc strings. So what it thinks is that this is not a code. This is not a piece of code. It's saying, this seems a little weird to me. If you're trying to document your code, then use, triple double quotes. If you are trying to write code, then you did something wrong. So that's essentially what it says to me. It says, I'm not sure what this is. You want to fix it. And I know this. So this is what I want my function to do. I wanted to give this greeting. So whenever somebody says, hey, greeting, I wanted to say, hey, oh, excuse me, I am happy to see you. All right. Now, because this is a function and this is the greeting it's supposed to give, it's supposed to perform, we're going to use a special keyword called return. So sometimes a function can do a whole bunch of operations and it just kind of stays and it doesn't tell anybody about it. In this case, we actually wanted to speak it out. We actually wanted to share this greeting with whoever calls this function. So we're going to use the word return, right? By the way, if it has a squiggly line under it, the only reason for that is it wants to have 2 empty lines. So if you do another empty line, the squiggly line will go away. All right, so now we have this brand new function. It's called greeting. And you might be thinking to yourself, great, what do I do next with it? Now, unfortunately, so if you see right now, I'm going to run my code. My greeting is nowhere in sight, nowhere. Oh, actually, I forgot to fix this. So name.strip, there we go. So as you can see, hey, I am happy to see you is nowhere in sight, right? Do you see it anywhere in the console? It's not anywhere. Now, the reason for that is that we never called our greeting. We never called it. So it's a function. It's basically like something that this, something that this file can do, right? This module can do. But until you ask it to do this, it's not going to do it for you. It's kind of like a child. Basically, until you ask your teenager to wash the dishes, they're not going to wash the dishes, right? Until you ask them to vacuum the floor, they're not going to vacuum the floor for you. So in order for it to actually do the greeting, do that action, you need to ask it to do that action. You actually have to be like, so by the way, it would be nice if you would do it. So what we need to do is we need to invoke this. And it's very easy to do, right? All you have to do, actually, we might want to move this up later, but all we need to do is we need to call it. So we're going to say, hey, greeting. Now this looks a little bit weird. The reason it looks weird is because we're basically repeating the same thing twice. But you have to keep in mind that this is the definition and this is us actually calling that function. So we're saying, we want to do this, please do this. Now this definition can move anywhere. It doesn't have to stay here. Right? It can actually move up. Forgot how to move it up. Oh, shit. Code. Move statement up. Okay, so it's Command Shift up. There we go. Dun, 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 dun. We can move it all the way up if we want to. Dun, 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 dun. See, there you go. I just relocated. But we can still have the greeting being called here. All right. And it's still going to work. All right. So what we're going to do is we need to decide now who will speak the greeting. Do we want this code to actually print the greeting into the console, or do we want the greeting to be printed out here? What do you guys think? I'm kind of partial to doing it here. What do you think? Let's try it here. So we're going to say print around it and say run. And I have my greeting. You guys see it?
Mhm.
All right, so one more time. We defined what our function does all the way up here. And it doesn't matter where it is. I mean, I moved it all the way up just to show you that it doesn't matter where it is. You know, you can put it back if you want to. It would still work. It doesn't matter where you put it. The point is that it can live anywhere. We can even put it in a completely different file. We can even actually try that right now. But once we call it, it's going to be like, what is this thing? Okay, I'm going to go back to it and I'm going to do whatever the instructions are. I'm going to do it right here. All right. Now, we said that it's possible for us to pass in some inputs into our greeting. So here, maybe I want to pass in a person's name. Maybe instead of just saying, hey, I'm happy to see you, I actually want to say, hey, like Bob, right? Or hey, I don't know, Miss Smith, I'm happy to see you, right? I want to actually pass in some stuff. So I already told you guys that the actual input goes over here in parentheses, right? Over here in parentheses. So here, let's put a little bit of a string in there. Let's say we want to put, I don't know, Jane, right? Now, as soon as I do that, my code is unhappy. There's this weird highlighting thing that's happening. And in PyCharm, anytime you see your code doing something weird, like you're like, it doesn't like something here, I don't know what's going on. You can just put your mouse over it and kind of let it hover. And it will tell you why it's being weird. It will tell you like, oh, unexpected argument. Right? So it's like, I didn't expect this. Why are you putting this into my parentheses? I don't understand. And so the reason it's an unexpected argument, by the way, if you see more actions, I think it's going to offer to, no, in this case, it doesn't offer it. Sometimes it will actually offer to add it for you into the function. Here it doesn't. But it gives you a little bit of it. It says, you're trying to pass some inputs to me, but I honestly don't know what you want me to do with them. That's essentially what it's saying. So what we can do to our greeting is we can say, all right, we want to pass some data in, but we need something to store that data. Now, do you guys remember what we use to store data?
We need to use variable and assign value.
Yeah, we can just use a variable. So in this case, when a variable is inside the parentheses of a function, it's actually called a parameter. It's exactly the same thing. The only difference between the two words is when you say variable, it means it's outside of the method parentheses. And when it's the same variable, but inside the method parentheses, the round parentheses, we call it a parameter just to denote that it's actually the input into a function. All right, that's all it means. So they mean exactly the same thing. They both mean a container, but one means it's an input into a function, and the other one means it's just an assigned value that came from somewhere else. All right, so def greeting. And then here we're going to say, I mean, I don't know. What do you think we should call our parameter? Any suggestions?
Parameters. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
So we could call it param1, but that's not a very descriptive name for that parameter. What do you think is a better one?
You mean like just like name, or I don't know, like customer name or whatever?
Yeah, you can do you absolutely, you can do customer name, you can just do a name, you can do something like I don't know, first name.
Should it be a starting point and an ending point and an increment, if there is any?
Ending point. Okay, elaborate a little bit, because I think I'm missing some of the context.
So basically, the greeting will be the first name and the last name as the first name as the beginning point and the last name as the ending point. And if there is an increment, we can add it. We can add that increment at the end of the parameter as an end parameter. I'm not very sure.
I think you're kind of jumping way forward.
Sorry.
But now I think we're going to keep it simple, but we can
Yeah.
definitely add more stuff. So for now, we're just going to say first name, right? First name. All right, so now we have this thing. We put first name. Now, if you scroll down, you see, not complaining anymore. It says, cool, I get it. All right, Jane goes into first name. I get it. All right, but the problem is now our first name is underlined and it's gray, right? Why is it gray? So let's read about it. It says argument name should be lowercase. All right, that's fine. We're going to ignore that. But also, it says parameter first name value is not used. It's not used.
Can create this variable and we didn't assign any value to it.
Yeah, no, it's not that we didn't assign it. It's just we have this parameter, but none of our code inside our function uses it. It says, yeah, you got some data, but you're not doing anything to it. You're just wasting it, right? Now, first things first, the reason it doesn't like my parameter name here is because this is called camel case. So when you capitalize the first letter of every subsequent word in order to still kind of have meaning, right? So the words doesn't, and in Python, the default is actually using underscores. Now, full disclosure, I currently work with JavaScript. So my brain immediately wrote camel case because that's actually how you do it in JavaScript. That's the kind of the standard for convention for naming variables. So please excuse me. The PyCharm is completely right. And because we're doing Python, we should be using underscores. So I'm just going to quickly change that. But in case you see me doing something simple like that, it's just because my brain is switching between two languages. So in Python, the naming convention is to use an underscore between words. The only exception to this is if you're naming classes. So if you're naming a class, then you can use camel case and it's not going to complain at you. But for everything else, the naming convention is to keep it lowercase and use underscores. So here we go. It's first name. As you can see, it's not complaining about the naming anymore. It just now complained about not being used. All right, now that we have this first name, how do you think we should use it?
We put this the inside the curly brackets next to hey.
Okay, all right. So I like that idea. I'm going to put curly brackets and I'm going to put first name. All right. Now, as you can see, it actually messing with me. And I was going to say it doesn't work, but as soon as I put an underscore, it auto-completed for me when I double click and even put
F.
Yeah, so it jumped ahead of me. Didn't let me mess with you guys a little bit, but here we go. So it immediately realized what we're trying to do, immediately created a formatted string, and now there is. So now if we run this, it should say, hey, Jane, I am happy to see you, right? All right. Now, what else can we come up with? What do you think? What else can we come up? Somebody proposed the last name. Let's do that, but we're going to make it a little bit more fancy. So we're going to put a last name. But in this case, I don't think everybody wants to be called by first name and last name, right? I think sometimes like when we do like an introduction, like I don't like people to call me, Miss Yampolskaya. I just prefer Ellie. I mean, if you really have to be, formal, Miss Ellie is fine. So I usually don't give people a last name. So I think in this case, when we provide a greeting, we want to give people the option of not providing a last name. Like if they want to provide the first name and the last name, great. We're happy to find out about it. But if they don't, that's fine. This takes us to the next step in functions is that where we can provide a default. So in other words, if we provide a default to any of the parameters in the function, it means it's no longer required. It's optional. It means that if a user doesn't want to provide a value, we already have our own default value that we can use for it, or we can just specify that it's okay for it to be none. Does everybody understand what I mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. We're making it optional. Perfect. So in this case, we can either set it to empty string or we can send it to nothing, which in Python means none. If you're coming from a background such as C++ or Java, it will be null, right? Or JavaScript will be null. So none, null, or undefined. They all basically have the same meaning. So here, I think we're going to go with, I'm thinking none. Now notice how none has that uppercase N, which doesn't really fit the Python convention, quite well, but it's actually a special reserved word. So it has kind of a little bit of different rules that it plays by having a special reserved naming. Same with the word string, like the object string starts with a capital S, but again, it's a special reserved word. All right, so again, we have this great business going on. So what we can do is we can actually do a little bit of logic, right? So we're going to jump inside here and we can do a little bit of logic. We're going to say, okay, well, if we have a last name, maybe instead of saying, hey, and then, you know, Bob, maybe we can say Mr. or Mrs., right? And then, you know, I'm happy to see you. So basically completely ignore the first name, or we can use first name and last name, but we want to put Mr. or Mrs. in front of it. All right. So let's see. So how can we do this? All right. So we're going to do a little if statement. All right. In Python, there is two ways to ask a question. All right. So there is a way where you can ask a little bit of a question and then provide what to do in that case, and then an alternative, or you can do it all in one line, just one long line where you kind of do everything in one. Give me a second. I'm going to see which one I think is best for us in this case. Let's do the block first, because I don't want it to get all messy. No, that's actually fine. I don't know which one is better. No, okay, I'm gonna take the long way and then I'll show you the short way. Is that okay with everybody? We're gonna do both. Because I'm afraid that if I do the short way, I'm gonna lose some folks. All right, so what we want to do, we want to say, okay, did somebody pass us a last name? Because by default, right, it's none. So look at this. Right now, we added a second parameter, right, last name, but this is not complaining. It's not complaining at all. It says, okay, you just passed in Jane, not a problem. You don't need to specify last name. If I didn't specify none here, if I would have left it like this, it would have complained. See, it's complaining. It's saying there is a last name parameter missing. But because we specified a default, it became optional. So there you go. It's optional. No complaints here. But now, because it's optional, we never know. We don't know. Sometimes somebody might pass a last name to us. Sometimes may not be supplied for us. So there will be no last name as part of the input. So we need to ask a question. Each time we're going to be like, I wonder if somebody passed us a last name. So the way to do that is just to ask an if statement. So if there's a last name, right? If there's a last name, do something. So, and for this case, I'm just going to put pass. We'll decide together what to do. If there is no last name, we're going to say else, right? Do something else. That makes sense? So it's a little template. I just put pass for now because it's a placeholder, but it's a question. Like if there's a last name, do one thing, else do something else. So can you guys give me a little bit of ideas? What do you think we should do if somebody passes us a last name?
Maybe if the person provides the last name, so that means this first condition is true, right? Like executes, then it returns like, hey, or what is it, or function. So I mean, like if non-conditions, like if first one is false, like nobody provides, then we'll execute the second part of the code when we provided else, and now we pass because we didn't specify yet.
Exactly.
Sorry
like
for my explanation.
Yes. No, it's good. It's good. So again, just to reiterate, what is being said is we're going to have two return statements now. So in one case, when there is a last name, we're going to return one message. And if there is no last name, we return our original message, right? So that's basically what we're trying to do. So here's our original message. And we're going to say this is going to be the else. So in other words, if there is a last name, something else is going to get returned. But if there is no last name, we're going to keep our previous behavior. We're going to keep our original behavior. Does everybody understand what I'm trying to say and what we're trying to do? Is everybody on the same page?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
so
can
far.
use
Mhm.
we can use Mr. Plus last name for greeting.
Okay.
Or
Yeah,
Mrs.
exactly. Exactly. Well, I think let's do Mr. for now, and then we can get creative later as well. All right. So we can move this over here instead of the word pass. So I'm just going to return it. So what's going to happen is we're going to say, if there's a last name, fill in the blank. We haven't filled it in yet. Or if there is no last name, in other words, else, our original message is going to go out, which is just the first name. All right. So now we just need to figure out what we're going to do this here, right? For the pass. So what should we do? What should we do? What do you think? Who's going to be creative today? Turn. Yeah. Return. We're doing return.
Yes, the same string with the Mr.
Yeah, you want to do
And the
hey,
last
Mr.?
name?
I don't know if hey, Mr. sounds good. It sounds like a little disrespectful. Hey, Mr. Let's do something more creative. Let's do something like, how do you do? And we'll do Mr. and then last name. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yes.
All right, let's do that. All right. Now, so that's very good. We can now try it both ways. We can do greeting Jane, and then we can do greeting, no, let's not do Jane. Let's do John. And then Doe. Oops, forgot my quotes. All right, so we're gonna do it both ways. Now what you see on the bottom here. Hey, Jane, I am happy to see you. And how do you do, Mr. Doe? Is that what we wanted?
Yes.
All right, I think I want to do question mark at the bottom over here. Okay, what I'm going to do, you guys, is that we have a lot of code inside here. I'm just going to comment it out so it doesn't get in the way for now, using my highlight and then command slash, right? You guys saw that? Just so you guys can keep it, but then when we run our code, we don't get all the other junk. We just get our two messages. It helped me kind of do stuff. The added benefit is over here on the left. You can actually close the entire block of code, which is what I'm going to do right now. So it's going to look like my comment disappeared. It didn't disappear. I just collapsed it. And later on, I can unfold it. So right now, do you see what I'm doing? I'm going to click over here and it's going to collapse. There's going to be ... That code did not get erased. I commented it out. It turned it into a block comment. And now I collapsed it. But if I do over here like that, it's still there. Okay, so I didn't erase anything. I just made it easier for you to see the code. All right, everybody good? Nothing disappeared. We're all great. All right, so here's our greeting. Here's our two print statements. Here's what we get at the very end. All right, so we have, hey, Jane, I'm happy to see you. And then we have, how do you do, Mr. Doe? Are we always sure it's going to be Mr.? Are we always sure?
No, sometimes it might miss.
You offer a solution for me. So I'm thinking next I'm going to do an Winter.
We can use if else. Another one condition provide. One more.
Okay, and where does that condition go? And what are we conditioning on? How do we figure out if it's a woman or a man?
It's a good question.
It's a good question, but you guys have all the tools you need in order to be able to solve this problem. All right, what do you think?
Use other variables.
You can have another variable. Which variable should we have?
Gender.
All right, I like it. All right, gender. It's unhappy with me. It doesn't like it. Why does it like it?
It doesn't like
Oh.
it because you do not use it now, so.
No, I put the gender before last name, right? Because after last name we don't do that. The gender before last name is okay.
So what is it? What does this mean? Non-default parameter follows default parameter. A little bit weird, right? Remember, I told you this is a default, right? Do you guys remember? So when we want to make something optional, we provide a default. So this is a default parameter, and it's saying a parameter, again, a variable, right? Parameter without a default is following one with a default. So turns out in Python, when you when you add parameters to a function, there's a specific order they have to follow. So everything that is required, in other words, everything that does not have a default goes first. Then everything that has a default follows. Does that make sense? So you can't, alternate. You can't be like, this doesn't have a default and this has a default and this doesn't have a default and this has a default. Right? They have to be in groups. Everything without a default, which is required, everything that's optional that has a default. So that's why it's complaining here. So what do you think? We now can go two ways. We can either take this parameter right here and we can move it in front of last name, or we can keep it where it is, but provide a default. Which direction should we go?
Provide the default.
All right. What should the default be?
None.
No.
Like male, female.
Okay. So what should the default be?
You can use a Boolean, true or false.
All right. Then we shouldn't call it a gender. Then we should call it what? We can call it male, for example, or female. But if we're going to do gender, that doesn't kind of let us know that it's a Boolean. So I think in that case, we have to use either letter FM or female, male, I don't know, somehow. You guys tell me. But do you see what I'm trying to say? Gender. So again, I'm back to that whole concept of self-documenting code. When you see the word gender, you don't immediately think true, false. So usually, if you want to use a Boolean, you can say something like is male. Then it specifies, okay, yes, we want, for example, true to be the default. That makes sense?
Yeah.
But if you're going to go with the gender, which is perfectly fine, I'm game with that. Gives us a different way to practice. Then we have to specify not a Boolean, but some kind of other value. So again, let the class choose. Should it be a gender default female or default male? And are we going to use the whole word, or do we want to use just the character? What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's up to you. So we have special, like we should have just only one choice, right, for this?
Oh, we have choice.
No, technically there's two, right? There's so okay, fine. Nobody wants to choose. Let's say that by default it's female, just because I'm a female, and guess what? I get to put a little bit of towards the female side. And we'll just use one letter, just because I don't want to type out the whole word. I'm lazy. All right, so we'll use the letter F. All right, so now we know that when somebody calls this function, when they call it, and they do not pass in a gender, we're automatically going to assume that this is a female. Okay, we're automatically going to assume it's a female. If they want to specifically tell us that, no, I'm a male, right? They would have to pass in a gender. They would have to say, I'm not a female, essentially. I'm a male or M or something like that. All right, so having said that, what about this code should we change?
So we need to change the condition if.
Where does that go?
For example, if gender equal F, return this message. Else, return something else. If else, return something third month.
Okay, so what you're proposing is we add more if-else layers. So what you're saying is we can do something like if-else in the middle over here, right? Or excuse me, else if. I'm confusing languages again. If else, and put another condition inside here. Does that make sense? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we can do that. Let's explore that, and then I'll show you a more efficient way. All right. So one thing we can learn is that we don't have to have a single if and then a single else layer. We can actually keep asking questions. So we can have if, and then another else if, and another else if. At the very bottom, after like 20, 30, 40 layers, we can have else. So else always goes on the bottom, if always goes on the top, but you can have other layers between. And so that's what we're talking about. We were talking about a second ago. So we can do else if, right? It is actually autocompletes for me right there. You see that? Else if. And then here we provide another question. So for example, we can say something like, somebody said gender. If gender, and here we can just say equals. So because in Python, we use the equal sign, one equal sign to assign value. When we actually want to equate things, think like of a scale, right? We put two equal signs and they have to line up equals. So two equals. If gender equals what?
F.
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 All right, F. All right. Then what?
Then return
Mrs. Gender Mrs. Yes.
All right, miss. Okay, fine. Fair enough. Now, do you think right now the way the code is that it will work? And if not, why? And if yes, why?
It's not work because I think if last name we have to have another condition last name and gender equal F.
Okay. All right. So what you're saying is I need to combine the question about
Yes.
last name and the gender. All right, cool. All right, we can do that. We can do that. So let's say last name, right? And we can say and, right? So we're saying if there's a last name and gender is F, do this. Is that correct? Is that correct?
They have the and the things. It's not and like ampersand in front of 7. Shift 7.
Shift 7. So
Yeah.
so are you trying to say that this should be first? This should be first?
No. I mean and. That means use the and. Can they use and or I use the sign is and or and? Okay, it's okay. I don't know. This is my idea. No.
So I'm not sure what you're asking. I know in some languages, JavaScript, Java, you do end this way.
Yes.
Okay.
I want
So
to do
in
that.
Python, you just put end. Just right. Or similarly in Python, you use or. So Python is actually designed to be very English-like. All right. You can also use the word not. So literally all of those other languages where you had to use like weird characters, like exclamation mark, blah, blah. Here, no, here you just use words. It should read like English. That's the whole point of it. Yeah. So here we just say end, and that's there it is. Okay. So again, back to the original question. If I run this code right now the way it is, do you think it works? Let's try it. Let's try it, right? So we have and winter, and I'm not going to pass in a gender because by default, it's already female. You guys agree?
Yes.
I'm not going to pass it in. I'm just going to pass in and winter. And what I should see on the very bottom is Mrs. Winter. Mrs. Winter. But I see Mr. So, what's wrong? Let's logic through this. What's wrong? What did we do wrong? It's actually helping us. You see how there's a little green underline thing happening.
We didn't say anything to last name.
Sorry?
Like we didn't specify anything for last name.
Didn't specify anything for last name. No, we did winter right here and winter. I'm sorry.
We just execute the first condition.
The first condition.
And it doesn't matter that we do not specify gender. It works. The first line is the first condition, then it works like the second condition works, and that's all.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So our code is right. As you can see, it compiles, it runs, everything is beautiful. Our logic is wrong, right? We are actually checking for something that is more complicated after something that is less complicated. And so the less complicated container catches more. And the way if else block or structure is designed is as soon as one of them is true, the rest don't get executed. It just basically exits out at that point. So here we immediately ask for a last name and immediately assume it's Mr. without even checking the gender. So how can I fix this? What would need to happen for me to fix this?
Replace Mr. and Mrs. and the condition with gender to the first.
Yes.
Right. So I think all we really need to do is this, right? We just have to have this first one on top, right? Where we check if there's a last name and a gender. And then, of course, if it's not female, if it's anything else like male, blah, 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 right? Then we can just say Mr. as long as there's a last name. And if there's no last name, we don't really care if there's a gender. Do you guys agree? There's no last name because we just say, hey, the first name. And that can be anybody. It can be Bobby, Jane, anybody we want. So that should work. Let's try it. All right. Oh, right. Is that correct? We agree?
Yes.
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 All right. Now let's modify this so it actually prints Mr. So we're gonna say gender. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be F. It can be pretty much anything. It can be any gibberish because all we're testing for is the letter F, right? So even if I do it this way, it will still be Mr. Does that make sense? We're only testing for letter F. So if I was to optimize this a little bit, somebody might make a typo and they might put in a lowercase f instead of an uppercase letter. So I might do something like gender.upper just to make sure that if they put a lowercase f by mistake, then I cast it to uppercase and that we still have the same case. Does that make sense? So all right, so here we saw something very interesting happening, right? I called the same function. It's one function, but I called it in 3 different ways, right? I called it with just a name. I called it with all 3 parameters. And then I called it with just 2 parameters, all the same function. And this is the beauty of Python. In Python, you do not have to define multiple functions just because they have different parameters that they take, right? In fact, what I can do is I can actually completely leave out the middle part. I can, for example, here, let's do an example. I can do Bobby. And then here I can put gender equals male. So I can completely leave out the last name. I am not provide it at all, only provide the first name and the gender. Now, if I do this, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think will be printed?
The third version?
Third version, yeah. Even though I provided gender, we don't care about gender if it's just the first name, right? So let's try that. So we see, hey, Bobby, I'm happy to see you, right? Even though I provide gender. But you can see it's still a valid way to call the function. So I'm still able to provide, leave out the second parameter and provide only the third parameter without a problem. So very interesting, different ways to call it. By the way, here, this word gender is optional. I don't have to do that. I can actually do it this way, and that will still work just fine. So many, 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 many ways to call it. Do you guys have any questions about many different ways to call a function that has optional parameters? Does anybody have questions? Any of this look weird to anybody?
I have a question. Can I ask you? Is there any difference when we use return and print? Can we use print instead of return?
Very good question, actually. So print, okay, hold on. Let me actually go back. Return literally means exit the function and go back to whichever place originally invoked you or called you, right? So as soon as we say the word return, it actually jumps all the way here, right? It jumps back here into the print statement. The only thing print does is it actually renders whatever is inside it into the console. into this section right here. That's all it does. So if we put the word print here, it actually will not return. Right? So if I put the word print here and I still leave print here, this print will print nothing because nothing will be returned to it. There will be nothing like for it to catch in order to print out. It will just be like an empty plate.
Okay.
That
Okay.
I'm trying to make it sense, but even in my head, it sounds weird. It's just, again, they do completely different things. I think in this specific context right here on the screen, I can see how it seems similar, right? But I think in most cases, they have completely different roles in the code.
Yeah, but anyway, we probably we can use print also, right? This function when we create any function and then we are gonna call it. So probably we can use print also, but maybe in different cases, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely you can use print wherever. You can have no returns at all in this function and just print statements out as well. I think here I just kind of wanted to practice with the word return. So that's what we did. All right, cool. Let's skip out a little bit of our current topic. We've kind of been diving into Python, exploring it, and we came up with functions. I want to talk a little bit about testing. Today's kind of usually I would go slower and kind of but because this is like an intro course and we're all kind of trying to figure out, you know, what's this course going to be about and all the different samples, I want to make sure I stick a whole bunch of things in. So I think let's step back from this. This was a good practice. We can dive into it more next session and create actual you know, different functions and have them talk to each other and why we would do something like that. But for now, I think we're going to play around a little bit with tests and more specifically with Selenium. So let's do that. Let's install our Selenium package. I'll show you how to install things first of all through PyCharm. Very easy. Hopefully it's going to be easy, hopefully. And then after that, maybe we can try to write a little bit of code to open up a web page and I don't know, do a little bit of a search or something like that. So let's try that. So we're going to right now, you can close this file, main.py. It actually automatically saves as you type code. So it's already saved. You don't have to worry about it. You can just close it. Also, if you were in debug mode, so if you go into debug and there is the square is bright red, make sure you click the bright red square just to stop the debugger. You want to free up all that memory. You don't want your computer to be slow. So we're going to go ahead inside here and actually, you don't have to go through here. There's two ways to do it, okay? One of them is to go through PyCharm and go into preferences. So that's one way to do it. Another way is over here on the bottom. So over here on the bottom of the screen, in the corner of your right PyCharm window, if you click on this where it says Python, it also says interpreter settings, right? So two ways to do it. You can go right here, interpreter settings, or file. Well, on Windows it's going to be file settings, and on Mac it's going to be PyCharm preferences. So I'm going to do it through the bottom piece just because it's the same on Mac and Windows and it's easier. So over here one more time where it says Python, just click on that and then say interpreter settings. All right, it's going to bring us here. It's a very fast way to get to this location. As you can see right now, we only have two things installed. We only have pip and we have setup tools. All right, now both of those are very important. Actually, wheel is a completely third thing. You may or may not have it. If you don't worry about it. So as you can see right now, we do have pip installed, but the version that I have is a little bit outdated. If yours is the same, great. If yours is like mine, outdated, you can actually upgrade it. So all you have to do is highlight this line and then click on this little triangle, or you can even double click here, honestly. But highlight it and click on the triangle and just like wait a second, it's going to update your pip for you. The reason we want to update pip is that it's, first of all, it has a whole bunch of like security measures in place and certificates and like URL information where to track down packages. So it's always good to have it up to date. Otherwise it can give you problems. And then, of course, setup tools, the same thing. You can highlight that line and click on the little triangle, and it's pretty fast. It's just going to kind of do its thing. And when it's done, it's going to say setup tools successfully updated. Now, if anybody already tried it, if you tried to update your pip and setup tools, and it's giving you an error, please drop me a little message. What's going to happen is after class, I'll help you fix it, or hopefully to the best of my abilities. But sometimes it does throw an error. Usually it's just work. When you click on the triangle, it should just be magically working. All right. So once you did that, once your pip is updated, again, very important, and setup tool is not as important, but you might as well. What we're going to do is we're going to click on the little plus sign right above. So pip setup tools right above them, there's a plus sign. Now, if you're on the Windows, your plus sign might not be above. It actually might be either on the left side over here or on the right side over here. And most likely it's going to be blue if you're on the Windows, but you're still looking for that plus sign. So again, if you're on the Windows, look for a blue plus sign, probably over here on the right side, depending on your version. If you're on the Mac, over here, but plus sign, you click on the plus sign. And then here, very easy, all we do is we look for Selenium. So you're going to see a lot of options with the word Selenium in them, a lot. There's a whole like huge list you can scroll to, but we're actually only interested in that top one. So that top one, when you search for it, it's just one word. That's the one we want, right? So we're going to select it. And then after you select it, all you have to do is just say install package at the bottom. All right, I'm going to do it one more time just so everybody can see. Again, all the way from my PyCharm window, I'm going to click over here, going to say interpreter settings. Then I'm going to click on the plus sign. For me, it's right above my pip and setup tools. If you're on the Windows, it might be over here on the right side of your window. So click on the plus sign, and then all I do is I type in over here at the top, Selenium. And then afterwards, after making sure the correct thing is highlighted, and it's 100% usually the correct one. So we just scroll, kind of click at the bottom button called install package, and then wait a couple of seconds. Because you can see it in the bottom, it says here installing package, and over here, once it's done, it's going to say package Selenium installed successfully. Now, again, if you see a red banner, it's going to be red. It's going to be very hard to miss. And it says error installing a package. Drop me a note. I will help you after class. Usually it's because something with the certificate is off. So we might just have to install a certificate. Or maybe something is off with your pip, in which case we have to reinstall it. Either case, I can help you both ways. Okay, everybody got Selenium?
Yes.
Yep.
Yay, great. All right, now there's actually two things we can technically do. We can either, actually, let me see if we have unit test installed. Hold on 1 second, you guys. Don't follow me, I'm checking, and if it doesn't work, then. Oh, it's not working. No, it does have it installed. Okay. Just checking if unit test is installed. If it wasn't, we would have had to install it, but it's already there. So that's good. All right. So we can actually go one of two ways. We can manually install Gecko driver, which is the piece we need in order for Selenium to execute on our machine, or we can install an extra package. Now, I think next session, we'll install the manager for all of the Chrome drivers, and what's going to do is going to automatically install the updated version each time. But today, to save time and just to make things a little quicker, I think we're just going to manually install Gecko driver or Chrome driver, whichever, into our project. So I think we'll do it the simple way today. So what we're going to do is we're going to prep in advance. So we already installed Selenium. We're going to prep by creating a folder where we're going to put that driver just for today. Later on, we can either remove it or, do something fun with it. All right, so what we're going to do is there's two ways to do it. Again, you can either say file, new, and then choose folder, right? Or directory, or you can right click on test automation and say new, and then directory. Now, again, you don't want a Python package. You want to choose directory because we're not going to put Python code inside. We're going to put a specific little binary executable thing in there. So what we want is a Python what What we don't want is Python directory. What we want is a directory. There's two ways to do it. You can either highlight test automation and say file, new, and then choose directory, or you can right click on it and say new, and then choose directory. All right, now once we do it, I just like to call it drivers, but you can give it any name. You can call it lib, whatever you want to do it, just a container for the Chrome driver. All right, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to our trusty driver. Oh, excuse me, I can't talk. Trusty browser. We're gonna go back to our trusty browser, and we're gonna type in Chrome and then driver. Chrome driver. So the very first link that comes back is the one we want. There's no guessing game. So very first link, again, it's Chrome, like Google Chrome, and then driver, one word. So we're gonna go ahead and click on that, WebDriver for Chrome. And here's where things get a little bit complicated, right? You need to know what your version of Chrome is. So I am on Chrome. Oh, first of all, if you do not have Chrome browser, then you would need a different executable. So I'm assuming everybody has Chrome. If you are using Firefox, okay, if you're using Firefox, or you're using Safari, or you're using Opera, please let me know, speak up, because you would need a completely different executable for that. If you are on Firefox, you would need Gecko driver. If you're on Opera, you need a Gecko driver. For Safari, you actually need Safari driver. There's different ones for all the different browsers, but I'm assuming most of us, I think it's not 90%, 95% of users are Chrome users. So I'm assuming Chrome, just because it's kind of the most common one. All right, so now that we're here, we need to figure out which version of Chrome we have. So we're gonna go to Chrome, and we're going to say about Google Chrome. Now, if you're on Windows, your about Google Chrome might be under help. All right. So if you
I can say we need to just click on three dots on the right upper corner, and it says you help and about Google Chrome, and you'll see the
okay, I have it
version.
here as well. So there you go, another place to find it, right? So right, so you just basically need to get to about Google Chrome. Whether you get it from here or you get it from here, find your about Google Chrome. Thank you so much for calling that out, and make sure your version, right? Make sure your version matches the version you're going to be downloading. So as you can see, there's three versions right now. There's one that 108, 107, 106. And when I look at my about Google Chrome, mine is 107. All right. So that means I don't want 106, and I definitely don't want 108. I want to make sure they match. All right. Everybody gets it, right? So
no, can you show me how to find the Google Chrome on Windows, please? Not Mac. Yeah.
Okay. So we were just told that if you're on the Windows, there's this little triple dot in the corner right here, right here. And if you click on that, you're going to go to the bottom where it says help. And then over here on the left, and it says about Google Chrome.
Got it.
Right. So thank you so much for whoever called that out. Kudos to you. I think also on Windows, if you go to help, I believe you also have it here, but I haven't checked on Windows in a while. So thank you for that help. Again, once you check your version, make sure you remember which one it is, right? 106.
Does it matter the last two digits?
No, those ones don't matter. You only care about the first, that first, number before the dot. Even the ones following that, you don't care. Just the first number before the dot. So
okay,
for me, it's 107. So I'm going to do 107. Do not choose 107 if your version is not 107. I'm doing it because mine is, right? So mine 107, I will do 107. If yours is 106, great, keep it. Just make sure you download 106. If you have 108, awesome, more power to you. Make sure you download 108, all right? They have to match. So I'm going to get 107 because mine is 107. I'm going to click on it. Here you have another choice. It's an easy choice. You need to know what you have. So you either have a Mac or a Windows or a Linux, right? And if you have a Mac, you either have a 64 or you have like a special Mac chip, blah, blah, blah. I'm basically just going to go with this one. Honestly, it doesn't matter which one you choose. Both Macs work just fine. I tried both. All right. So you can see the download is instantaneous. It's a very small file. So I got it very quickly. And then after you download it, just make sure you extract what's inside. Now, the reason I'm saying extract, for Mac users, it's very easy. You just double click. For Windows users, Windows will mess with you, okay? Because on Windows, when you double click on the zip file, so again, let me open up a zip so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So this is what it downloaded. It's a zip, right? Do you guys see it? It's a zip. So on Windows, when you download a zip file, if you double click on it, it does not extract. It just shows you what's inside, right? It shows you what's inside. And then when you try to drag those things out of the zip, it will not let you. What you need to do is you need to right click on it and say extract files, all right? Or if you double click on it, then once you see that file inside it, you have to right click on it and say extract. You need to use the word extract. Does everybody understand that? Don't double click on it on Windows. Select it, right click, extract. All right, groovy? That's probably the hardest part on Windows. On the Mac, we got it easy. On the Mac, you just double click on it. It will extract it for you automatically. So this is all that's inside. This is the whole thing. There's nothing else. It's just this. Right? Tiny little thing. All right, so on the Windows, please right click on it and you should have an option that says extract to. And
so on a Windows, when it's downloaded, it's an option menu and we need to choose show in folder. When you click show in folder, it opens as downloads. And then also just click on this, but do not open. And it shows the menu. Just not double click, but just click on this. And it says,
so if you just right click on it in downloads, it doesn't give you extract to?
Yeah, because it just only proposed to open if you just double click. But we need to show it in the folder first.
No, when you go
it doesn't
to
give any
downloads,
options. It doesn't give any options to extract.
Yes,
Yeah,
just
you don't
go on the file. Go on the file.
Can you share the
Right
screen,
click.
please?
Go open with, and then choose Windows Explorer, and then you're gonna have exe file from
Okay.
driver exe.
I'm gonna let you
Yes.
guys figure it out because obviously my information is outdated.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah,
Maybe that
absolutely.
will
I'd
help.
love that. I'd love that. Let me just give you permission because I think it might be turned off. 1 second. So share screen. I'm gonna stop sharing, and by all means, I will be very grateful if you do that.
So do you see my screen?
We do.
So this is my Booleans file. This is where I downloaded it, right? So here's the file, how it was saved. I just click right and I do extract all. I choose the file where I want to extract it. I choose the same folder. You can choose another one. Okay, extract. I had it already extracted, but I will replace. Okay, I already extracted.
Yeah.
And then you will see it like it is here.
So it is extract all. So as we just saw, just right click on it and you have extract all.
Yes, but if you just open it, you can access from the folder as well.
Yeah, so if you highlight it right now, there's a button right on top that says extract all as well. So
yeah.
Thank you so much. You're just thank you. Awesome.
But by the way, mine is not like that. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, are you sharing? Yeah.
You see my screen now?
Yep. Took a while to load.
Oh, this is my double click. I don't see any extract here.
Okay, I think for you it's on top. You see how there's like this pink section on top?
This? Nothing.
Excuse me, I saw you have 7-zip. You go to 7-zip and you can extract. Yeah, 7-zip.
right there, 7-zip. Yep.
Oh, as you mean extract here?
You
Extract
can
file.
You can do
extract
extract
to-
here. You can do extract here. Where is it? Where did it put it?
So where is it?
Refresh the page.
It might be, yeah.
Nothing.
Weird.
Try one more time.
On the bottom, maybe.
No, no,
No.
it's by date.
By
Yeah,
date,
try
yeah.
it again. Try it again, and then maybe.
It's Chrome driver by
Yeah,
under the
no,
framework
go to the
installation.
extract to, yeah, this one.
You
Try-
can see last month.
You come here, right?
You can do
No.
that. There
Yeah,
we go.
this one.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the second one, yeah.
This one.
open it. Yeah.
Yay, you got it. Okay.
So I open it.
No, don't open it. It's an executable. You can't open it. You can only execute it. So basically all we need to do is now take this thing and put it into that folder we created inside PyCharm. So you can do it multiple ways. You can copy it from here and paste it into PyCharm. You can drag and drop it, like right the way you have it right now. You can cut it and paste it. So just any means of taking it and putting it inside the drivers folder. So I'm going to
Can
share my
you
screen now.
like that?
Yep, you can do that. Yep. Yep, there we go. Just say refactor. And you're good. You're golden. It's in there. See?
Good.
Yeah,
Great.
awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. All right. So back to my screen. Everybody sees my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to do the same thing as you. I'm going to take that Chrome driver and I'm just going to drag it over and drop it into my drivers folder. Now, when I do that, it does open up a screen. Sorry, beach ball of death. Great. All right, hold on, you guys. I might have to kill. My Finder died. All right, so it opens up this dialog. Just make sure you click the word refactor. I know it's a little bit confusing, but that's what it means. It just means move things. And then when you open it up, you'll see it inside. Okay, cool. We're good?
Good. Yeah.
Awesome. Yay. All right, now here we're going to get creative. You can create a tests folder to put all your tests into, or for now, you can just keep it on the upward level. I like to keep my code somewhat organized, so I'm going to create a tests folder. However, this is not necessary. This is just my own personal organization purposes. So I'm going to right click and create a folder. Again, new. In this case, it has to be Python package because I am going to be putting Python code inside. And I'm going to call it tests.
Excuse me, I couldn't find drivers folder.
Oh, we created it. We created it. So we actually right clicked and we said new directory and we created drivers folder, just like that.
I see.
Yeah, we created it. So if you don't have it, just create your own. And if you already dropped your Chrome driver into a different location, create the drivers folder and then drag it into the drivers and just do refactor. Okay, so again, this is not necessary. This is strictly for me. If you want to follow along, great. If not, you can actually create your test file right at the top. You can just put it right at the top level. So I'm going to put it inside tests. Now, the weird part is when I did create a Python package, it will create this init.py file inside. It's completely empty. There's nothing inside it. It's actually strictly there to tell Python that this specific folder is for Python files. So that the whole role of that, well, actually it has other roles, but for now, as far as you guys should be concerned, its role is just to denote that this folder is for Python. And you'll also be able to see from the outside that these folders are different, right? Because one will have a little dot on it and one will not. So if it doesn't have a dot, it's not a Python folder. Even if you put Python code inside, Python will not be able to find that code. It will say, I don't know what this is. I'm not even going to look inside it. I don't care. If you want to create a folder where Python will look, so you actually want to put code in there that you want to execute, then you need to make sure that there is an init.py file inside. And that's what we see here. So again, the way I created it is I right-clicked and I said new. And this time around, I chose Python package. So again, directory means regular folder. Python package means you get that init file inside. And we're going to talk a lot more about what init does in Python for the future. Right now, as far as you should be concerned, it's just a special doodad that lets Python figure out that there's code inside. Questions?
For some reason, I cannot create a driver folder under test. Under Python project, I'm right-clicking, new directory, I'm typing drivers, and then that directory doesn't exist. Oh, it just happened. Thank you, thank you.
It's always like that, right? As soon as you speak up, it starts working.
Sorry.
No, it's no problem. What I will say is sometimes it will lag, especially when you're like on Zoom and PyCharm and everything. So I usually try to refresh. So if you right click on test automation, there is a reload from disk option, and it's kind of like a refresh in your browser. And sometimes that helps. Like if something is just lagging, if you refresh, it will appear. Okay, so now that we have our special, super awesome Python package, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to new. And now,
excuse me.
Yes.
I got a question. So do we have to create the test file, the test directory, or it's by default?
No, I created it.
Oh,
but
you created it.
You don't have to create it. I created it, first of all, because I like to keep things organized. Also, I wanted to show you the difference between a folder and a package. But
okay, got it. Thank you.
two birds with one stone. But if you didn't create it, it's fine. You can actually create a Python test file right at the top. So this is all fine. All right, so I'm gonna do, actually, let's pause. It sounds like some people need to catch up. So I'm just gonna pause for like a minute. And maybe, you know what else I'll do? I'll unfold all of my folders so you guys can see what's inside. So right now we just have our test automation. We have our drivers folder. There's Chrome driver inside. We didn't do anything else to it. We did not touch it. We just dropped it in and forgot that it was there. And then we have our tests. The specific word for it is Python package, but it's actually just a folder with a doodad init.py file inside. That's all it is. And then what you will also see is your virtual environment, Venv. Now, we don't want to open it. We don't want to look inside it. We don't care about it. It's just there to show us that we have a virtual environment. When you're a much more advanced Python programmer, you might want to look inside it just so you can see how the code works. For now, just ignore it. It's fine. And then we have our main.py, which is what we created earlier, where we played around earlier. All right, so that's what we have. Hopefully everybody caught up. And now we're going to do that last step. We're going to right click on tests. So make sure you highlight tests, right click on it. You're going to say new, and then we're going to choose Python file, not Python package, Python file. So we are going to choose Python file. And this time around, we are going to choose Python unit test. So there's actually 3 options on the bottom. You can do file, unit test, and stub. We're going to use unit test as an SDET, right? Software developer in test, or software developer engineer in test, or a test automation engineer. You are going to be working a lot with, well, they're called unit test frameworks, but we use them for testing. So it doesn't have to be unit test. It can be any testing framework. So you're going to be working with a lot of testing frameworks in a lot of different languages. Python has 2 primary unit testing frameworks. One is called unit test and one is called PyTest. So 2 of them. Right now, we're just going to use unit test. PyTest is very similar. It's just by default, PyCharm uses unit test. You can configure it to use PyTest. I don't have a preference. They're both awesome. Some people really like PyTest. Some people like unit test. They're comparable. So anyways, so we're going to do PyUnit test. We're going to give it a name. let's call it my first test.
Excuse me, Ellie, may I ask a question? I have in my drivers folder Chrome driver exe with a question sign. What should I do?
Nothing. It's just not sure how to. It's confused what kind of file it is. So that question mark, don't worry about it. That's just PyCharm saying, I am not sure what this is or what I should use to open it. But since you're not going to be opening it, you're just going to be storing it there. Just ignore it. It's just PyCharm losing its mind.
And then next, I should organize folder tests, or what is it? I'm a little bit lost.
Right. So what we want to do is we want to create this Python unit test, and then where you put it is up to you. I created a tests Python package, and I'm going to put it inside, but you can also put it on the top level. It's not going to change your code in any way. It's going to be
again new and folder tests, or what is it?
Okay. So if you want to create tests, all right, let me do right click new, and you're going to do Python package, because you're going to be putting
yes. And I should give him a name. Yes.
Yeah, any name. Yeah, I called it tests. Any name. All right, good.
Yes.
Awesome. And then after that, what I did is I selected tests. I said right click, and I did new. And in this case, it's Python file. So before it was Python package.
Python file. Okay.
Python file. Now the important bit here is not the name. The important bit here is Python unit test. So make sure you select that bit first.
Yes. Python unit test, and
then just the name. So I'm going to call mine my first test. You don't have to put a py afterwards, by the way. It will automatically put py. So enter. There it is. Okay. So once again, just like when we had main and it had some template stuff inside, here when we create a Python unit test file, it has some template stuff inside. It's helpful. So we're not going to delete this one. We're actually going to use some of this stuff. But this is basically what we have. So all right, everybody good?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you create the file with a unit test, they create for you the class, my test case that they create for you, or for us already, right?
Yep, it's a template. It's
the
just
template. Yeah.
It's just a template. You can rename this. You can rename it anything you want. Doesn't have to be my first test case. It can be like, I don't know, ABC 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
All right. So now remember that Selenium package we installed? This is where we're going to start writing a little bit of code. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get a WebDriver instance from that Selenium package. So I think all of you know that Selenium is the name of the organization, right? But the actual code, the actual bit that actually interacts with the browser is called WebDriver, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get WebDriver specifically package from the Selenium package. So we're going to get, I think it's actually not a package, it's a module. So WebDriver module from Selenium package. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to say from Selenium. And again, it does autocomplete for us. So you don't have to type out the whole thing. We can say from Selenium import, and we're going to put WebDriver. All right, so that's going to be the first thing. Now, obviously, as soon as we type it out, it's going to get grayed out. And the reason it's going to get grayed out is simply because we haven't used it yet. So that's fine. As soon as it gets grayed out, as long as there's no red underlines under it, you're golden. You're fine. You did everything great. So from Selenium, import WebDriver. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little better. Is this better? Like, is this big enough? Can do even bigger, I think. Yeah, you guys can see that?
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. All right. So we have a little bit of time left. I'm trying to finish up. All right. So once we do that, inside our test, so see, we have our template. We have dev test something, which is going to put a little bit of space right after that. After test something, a little bit of space, and we're going to say WebDriver. Now, remember, you type in a few characters, it auto-completes for you. So make sure you use that autocomplete, because you will make a typo and then you will be kicking yourself for a while trying to figure out what's going on, but you didn't do anything wrong. You just made a typo. So autocomplete WebDriver dot, right? Dot, that's our friend. Now, in this case, we have a whole bunch of options. We're actually not interested in the ones that are folders. So all these folders we're not interested in. It's these classes. See the letter C. It's these classes that we're interested in. So here, immediately out of the box, we have support for Firefox and Chrome. There's also this concept of a remote driver. That's when you want to execute your tests on computer A, but you actually want them to run on computer B. There's a way to set it up so that the code is triggered here, but it's actually executed elsewhere. Again, for this class, we're not interested in remote. And then there's a whole bunch of other things. So there's obviously support for Edge. There's support for IE. There's support for Safari, and then usually there's also Android, but I can't see it right now. So maybe they deprecated that. But anyways, a whole bunch of browsers that are supported. For this class today, since we downloaded Chrome driver, we're going to be using Chrome. Again, if you do not have Chrome on your computer, this will not work for you. You either need to install Chrome or you need to install a different driver. So Chrome driver goes with Chrome. Gecko driver goes with Firefox and Opera. And then for Safari, you need its own Safari driver. All right, so Chrome, right? Chrome. Double click Chrome. There we go. WebDriver.chrome. And then we are going to put parentheses after it. And there's going to be some stuff that goes in there. Now notice as soon as I put parentheses, this little box popped up. And it actually is giving me hints on what I need to supply. So one of the things right at the very top that's actually highlighted, right? It's the one in bold. It says executable path, right? Executable path. And then it says default executable path. So all it's asking here is for us to specify where do we put that Chrome driver. That's all we need to do. We just need to tell it where we put our Chrome driver. So we are going to follow what it says here. We're going to say executable. Again, I'm not going to type the whole thing out. I'm just going to say EX and I'm going to double click. All right. So EX double click. Again, don't type. I implore you from the bottom of my heart, don't type, autocomplete. All right. So one more time, I'm actually going to erase this and go from the very beginning. I typed in web. I double clicked to autocomplete. Right? Not a lot of typing. I said dot, I double clicked on Chrome. I opened the parenthesis. That's all I did. And then I typed in EX. I double clicked. So all in all, I typed in about 6 characters. Right? The rest of the stuff is just me double clicking. I'm not typing because typos lead to typos. We don't want to type. We want to autocomplete. All right. So we have WebDriver.chrome executable path. All right, where do we get this executable path from? What is this executable? It's this thing. It's this thing that we put inside drivers, all right? And there's a very, very super easy way for us to get the path to it. All we have to do is right click on it. So over there on the left side, we right click on it. And then over here, there's actually an option that says copy path, all right? We don't have to try to imagine it or come up with it. Copy path. That's all we're going to do. And it's actually going to give us an option. Do we want to do path from content root? Do we want to do absolute path? What kind of path we want? There is a programmatic way to use a short path and to build it in a very fancy way. We can cover it in the future. We absolutely will do that. But for today, since we only have about 10 minutes left, we're just going to say absolute path, right? I am usually very much against using absolute paths, especially in code that will eventually be pushed into source code management, because obviously my absolute path is not going to work for somebody else if they try to pull my code and have a copy of it on their machine. But again, this is just for today. We're learning. It's our first day. So for now, it's fine. It's fine. It's not a problem. All you need to do is make sure you remember to put quotes, single, double, doesn't matter, and you paste. That's all you're going to do. You're just going to put quotes and paste. So again, to get the path, right click on it, copy path, and then choose absolute in this case. And then over here, quotes and paste. All right, that's what it's going to look like. Now, if you don't like the fact that it doesn't fit on the screen, you can actually split it up. Right over here after the parentheses, you can press enter, and then it's going to kind of indent it a little bit for you. And then you can actually, even after equal sign, also indent it a little bit like that as well. That way it fits. All right, everybody caught up?
Yes.
We're almost there. We're so close. All right. Now, what we just did when we said webdriver.chrome and we specified executable path, we essentially created a browser session. In other words, it's the same as us clicking on this thing and a browser popping open. All right, same thing. That's what we just did. We just clicked on Chrome and it's going to go poof and it's going to pop open. Now, the problem is now that we did it, we didn't save a pointer to it. So we opened up the browser and we immediately lost it. It's open, but we can't interact with it because we cannot find it. We cannot find it. We don't know where it is. So what we want to do is we want to create a variable that stores the kind of the pointer to this browser that we just opened up. So over here, right in front of webdriver.chrome, we want to create a variable to store it so that later on we can keep interacting with it. There's actually three things that usually people call this variable. Some people call it cell for Selenium, S-E-L. Some people call it driver because WebDriver. Some people call it browser. I like to call it browser. If you feel a preference to call it either Selenium or driver, more power to you, go for it. So I'm going to call it browser equals. All right, everybody with me? So webdriver.chrome opened up a browser for us because we want to keep interacting with that browser. We're going to save a pointer into the variable called browser, and then every time we want to do something additional in that browser, we just say browser. We just refer to that variable again and again and again. Questions, comments?
Yeah, can you repeat please how to copy a path to
Yeah,
driver?
absolutely. So make sure you see it on the left side. So I have my drivers folder unfolded. And then what you're going to do is you're going to right click on it. And when you have, there should be an option to say copy path. So there's copy and right under it, copy path. And then you just select what looks good. I chose absolute path because in this case, it's the easiest option.
Thank you.
I have a question. So I copied absolute path, but I see an error. It's saying that PEP8 invalid escape sequence.
Ah, yes. Okay. You're on Windows, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So on Windows, there's one of two things you can do. You can either change all of your slashes to the opposite direction, or you can double them up.
Okay.
And there's no guarantee which of those two will work. So I would try one and then try the other, because it depends on which Windows you have. It depends on how it's going to like it. It's a little funky. Again, if this was not the first day, I would do like a fancy workaround. But with this for today, just sorry, bear with me. All right. And finally, the last piece for our test. So one more line. We're going to say browser dot. And then what we want to do is we want to pop open a URL. So in this case, we're going to say get. That's the only option that lets us provide a URL. So we're going to say browser.get. And then here we can specify some URL. Now, most of the time for this class, we actually use the URL for HRM. Oh, excuse me, that's a wrong window. There we go. So the URL that we usually use is hrm.portnov.com. That's the URL we use. It looks like this. It's a very familiar to everybody UI. So all we need to do is specify that URL in order to open the page. So I'm going to go back to my PyCharm and paste that URL in. So it's going to look like browser.get. and URL. Now, it doesn't have to be that URL. If you guys want to play around today with Google, you can do, www.google.com. If you have another browser that you want to play around with, that's fine too. Excuse me, not browser, website. Just pick some URL that you know works. Okay. All right. So line 12 right now is something that was part of a template. We haven't touched it yet. I'm going to leave it for a second. We're going to finish modifying it in just a moment. But for now, what we can do is we can try to run this test. And what we're looking for is we just want the browser to open and the web page to load. If it doesn't load or you have some kind of issue, I will help you after the class. But the idea is it should open for most of you. Now, if you really want to be able to see whether the browser opens or not, I do recommend adding a little sleep inside here. It literally is, you say sleep. And I would say maybe 3,000 milliseconds. So it's actually time.sleep, sorry. All right, so time.sleep, 3,000 seconds. And as you can see, when I say time.sleep, it's not happy with me. So if you hold your mouse over this, there's an option says import this name. All right, so again, time.sleep. And then if you hover over it for a while, it's going to say import this name. And you just say time. You just want to import time. So it's going to look at the end like this. It's going to add a little statement on top, says import time, time.sleep. All right. So I'm going to try to run this. Hopefully it works for me without a problem. At that point, the class is over, but I'm very happy to stay. If you're having any issues writing your code, I will stay and help you get it to the point where it works. So here we go. I'm going to run it. Oh, that's great. Sorry, y'all. I forgot to enable my settings. Chrome. Preferences. Where's my security? Privacy and security. Security.
I think you need to enable in the Mac settings, not in the Chrome.
Is it? I don't remember where it was
I
anymore.
think so, yeah. Go to can type security. Yep, in there.
Hmm.
And then on the right, I think scroll it down.
Over here? No, that's disabled.
And yes, right there. And you need to click to unlock.
You need to unlock.
Type in your password. Yep. Use password. And then
I don't see Chrome though. That's the
You
problem.
need to go to
click on
general,
details.
to general.
Yeah. 1 second.
At the bottom,
Yeah,
allow
allow
anyway.
There.
Oh, see, there you go. Okay. So thank you so much for your help. I'm going to repeat this so that other folks can follow. So what we did was we went to here. We looked for security of privacy, which is here. And then we switched to general. If you were on privacy, or switch to general. And then I guess it's being blocked here, which is annoying, but it is what it is. So hopefully now it's gonna work. Fingers crossed. All right, one more time. Nope. Or maybe yes, I don't know. Fingers crossed. My Mac is fighting me. All right. One more time. I think it was lagging because of the previous weird thing. All right, there we go. So my computer is being wonky a little bit just because I'm running a recording. This is Zoom, running Zoom, sharing screen, running PyCharm, running my browser, and also my test. For most of you who are not zooming and sharing your screen, it should be a little faster. But right now, I think it might just be very, very slow because of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing screen for a second, and when it passes, I'll show you that it passed. All right. Sorry, give me a sec. Just to free up some memory.
Ellie, do we need to save this code before running it?
No, they actually, every single time you type something,
I
literally,
got red all over it.
oh,
I got red all over.
probably something to do with your indentation.
Okay, mine
But
worked.
your what?
Mine worked.
Awesome. So it should
I
work.
had the same problem like you.
So I'm really sorry. I'm having the beach ball of death. Like literally my computer is not able to like run everything all together. It's showing me like a beach ball of death. So you heard from somebody else, the code works. But
Ellie, how to start it? I don't understand.
so right next to the test, there should be a run button, right? Do you see it right here?
Right next to the test.
Oh, I'm here. You're not seeing my screen because
Yeah, there's a green button there, like a green arrow.
yeah, so hold on. I'm gonna share my screen again. Hopefully it doesn't die. So over here, oh my gosh, please cooperate, just please. So over here, you can, or this one, it doesn't matter which one. Like you can either click this one and say run, or this one, say run. It doesn't matter. Both will work. You can even do this one. It doesn't matter. Any run button on this file will execute it. Now, your test might fail just because at the bottom here, it says assert equal true equals false. Obviously, that's true does not equal false. So either change it to true, true, or false, false. It should be passing.
No tests were found. I saw.
No what found?
No tests were found.
No
Couldn't
tests were found.
find my test. I don't understand why.
Okay, yeah, let's look at it in a second. I'm still hoping my thing will run, but every time I try to run it, I get beach ball of death and it crashes. So some of you might have to take my word for it or try it on your own laptop. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop recording, but I'm still here. And
can I share my screen for a second?
Yeah, let me just figure out how I can stop recording more.